I'd like to call to order the Village of Westmont special meeting, committee of the whole for Thursday, February 10th. And I'd like to ask our clerk to take the roll call.
Mayor Ron.
Here.
The clerk's here. Trustee Emery.
Here.
Trustee Fleming.
Here.
Trustee Porsley.
Here.
Trustee Klebanow. Here. Trustee Scott.
Here.
Trustee Seneca.
Here.
Manager Searle.
Here.
Attorney Zimonek.
Here.
Economic Development Director and Assistant Manager Kimball.
Here.
Interim Finance Director Mappice.
Here.
Budget Analyst Parker.
Here.
Village Planner Malik.
Here.
And from Planning and Zoning, we have Steve Badesco.
Here. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Very nice.
New business. The purpose of the meeting this evening is to hear presentations from 3 consulting firms regarding the possible establishment of a tax increment financing district, a TIF district, near the area of South Westmont Business District in the general vicinity of 63rd and Cass Avenue. Fred, did you want to give an introduction before our speakers come up to the podium?
Thank you, Your Honor. Staff is pleased to be here tonight to participate in this presentation to the special meeting of the Westmont Village Board. It was approximately 4 years ago that the board established the boundaries of the South Westmont Business District. We have seen some limited development in that area, but in an effort to accelerate the pace of development to possibly provide some tools for the development of that South Westmont Business District and that general vicinity of the village, we let RFPs recently at the board's direction for consulting firms to assess the possibility of whether or not a tax increment financing district would be an appropriate development tool for our use as a community here in Westmont. We did analyze the proposals that we received back, I think, Shannon, from, was it 11 different consulting firms? And the village manager, myself, and the village planner went through a preliminary review and analysis of those proposals, and we're pleased to present the following 3 firms to you tonight who will make presentations and submit to your cross-examination and question and answer session here this evening. They are Teska and Associates, S.B. Friedman, and Ehlers and Associates. And our first presenter tonight is Mr. Constantine Savoy, a principal in the firm of Teska and Associates. None of these firms tonight are strangers in the consulting business. They all have eminent reputations that precede them. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Mr. Con Savoy for his presentation tonight.
Okay. Thank you, Fred. Thank you for the warm introduction. Thank you as well, board, for the opportunity and staff for the opportunity to be before you. Let me say from the get-go, there we go, that Teska Associates has been well established in this region, and we have come to know and DuPage County do a lot of work in DuPage County and throughout northern Illinois, and certainly over the years have been very impressed, and I have become more impressive. I've had more time recently to get to know your community even better about the quality of what you provide and the strength of your economic development program. So you have done a lot, but clearly the times are different, and different tools are needed now. And you're in an area, particularly in the area we're talking about, the South Westmont Business District, that clearly is languishing. The signs are really quite evident for anyone making even a casual drive-by. So I think this is an opportune time that you're doing this, and I would further underscore the fact that I think strategically the way you're looking at not only moving forward with TIF, but potentially marrying TIF with your comprehensive plans and doing these, in a sense, simultaneously. And of course, we would like to think with one firm would be our choice. Is a great strategy, because the reality is there's going to be a lot of benefits derived out of the comprehensive planning process that will easily dovetail in the TIF, which I'll get into later. So, again, we're very pleased to be here tonight and also being considered for your comp plan as well. I do want to underscore what Fred said earlier about questions. We don't want to be stodgy stayed up here with a presentation. We really would like to have some interaction. So as I'm going through the presentation, or Ben Carlisle, who's with me tonight from the firm. I'll introduce a little bit more. If anything comes up in our presentation, just jump in with questions or anything you have of us. That's really what we're looking for tonight. So with that, let me just do a real quick recap on who we are. Again, my name is Colin Savoy. I'm going to be project manager for this project. I'm a principal planner with Tesca Associates. I've managed over probably 15 to 20 TIF districts, and my experience, as you will come to know about Tesca generally, is multidisciplinary. I don't just do TIF. We do a number of other related work in terms of comprehensive planning, fiscal analysis, and so forth. I have over maybe close to 30 years experience. Now we were just reminiscing, Ben and I come from our early days in Highland Park, which was, as many of you know, one of the first and probably still one of the most successful downtown TIF districts in the region. I was actually there at the time that they were just starting with the initial Port Clinton Square project. So Ben also is going to be my right-hand man on this project as project planner, responsible for the day-to-day operations, the research, the analysis, working with staff on a direct day-to-day basis. And Ben also brings 8 plus 9, I think, years we were talking about earlier, experience, both again on public, private sector experience. And I think we want to underscore that fact that we've sat in your shoes and have that experience. About the firm, we want to underscore and put in your mind 4 important things to remember about who Tesca is about. One, it's our regional commitment. And I said a little bit earlier, but it's true that our firm was structured in 1975 by Bob Tesca, who left Barton Ashman, a very successful consulting firm, to start his own practice with the mission of focusing primarily on the Northern Illinois and Chicago metropolitan region. And that still remains true, albeit, 35 years later now. And I've, of course, been very fortunate to be part of most of that. And so the message is we're committed to the communities in this area. We have a lot of long-standing relationships. We've done a lot of work in the area. We're not about a firm that's going to do a project, then leave tomorrow and get on a plane and never see us again. And that's much about our philosophy as my own personal interest in terms of the relationships that I desire to have with communities long-term. That's, quite frankly, the satisfaction I get in this job. What we also want you to know about Tesca Associates, that we are multidisciplinary, which I underscored a little bit earlier, but it's important to know that we're planners, we're landscape architects, we're urban designers, we're architects, and we're economic development specialists as well. And so we bring a full range of an approach to you, which I would like to say is a very holistic approach. And the way I think you should be looking at TIF is not just as a financial exercise going through a set process in state statutes, but something that's going to be analyzed holistically in what, in terms of the development, would be, what the potential market opportunities are, and then how the potential impact, what that impact will be on the community beyond just the fiscal impact. The other thing about our community development focus gets back to that notion I said earlier about underscoring the fact that we look at a whole project holistically, and that we get a lot of projects done. And what you, I'm sure, want to know about firms beyond the fact that we can do pretty plans and create the necessary documents is what's your track record in actually getting projects done, which I know is your ultimate goal. Our experience, this is just a quick graphic as a way to illustrate, and I think some of this is in the proposal, the extent of the work we've done. Many of the communities that are shown here, and several which alone in DuPage County, and I realized even walking in here tonight, there was one listed, the Village of Winfield. We created their downtown TIF, and there's, I know, at least one project that was the result of that, a mixed-use project in downtown Winfield. So you can get a sense of the practice that we've had in Northern Illinois. Getting projects done. Tesca created the TIF district, created the plan and program, and assisted in the developer recruitment for some of the initial projects in downtown LaGrange. The initial project and site focused on a 51-acre site adjacent to the downtown area and the metro station. We were successful in recruiting a developer for the initial project, which was a $10 million project. And of course, you know the LaGrange story. It's clearly in our region, one of the most successful ongoing stories of development in this area. Geneva is another great story of ours. We've had a long-term relationship over many years previously with Geneva over their riverfront development. Again, we were involved in planning, establishing the TIF district. In fact, TESCA was also involved in some of the initial urban design and public place design associated with the initial Catalyst project, which was Geneva on the Dam. If you've been downtown, you know of that project. And we've since been working with Shodine and reviewing projects on behalf of the village. Can't remember if this has a pointer. Yeah, I don't know where to point. Here, can I use this? Yeah, there it is. This is the Harrington Hotel. Some of you may be familiar, very upscale hotel. And then the graphic is a somewhat newer senior housing and condo facility. In Deerfield, we established the planned TIF district, assisted in the review of developer proposals, and did the financial analysis for downtown Deerfield. This is a very successful mixed-use project with retail, residential, and office components. If you know downtown Deerfield, it was really at the heart of the village center at the intersection of Waukegan and Deerfield roads within walking distance of their metro. One project I was intimately involved with, you may be aware of, is the Village of Willow Springs. A great story. We were involved from day one. This is, for me, one of the most exciting stories because planners rarely in our lifetime get to see much built from the time you envision a concept to the time you actually see it done. And that was really the role we played when we got the opportunity to come in to Willow Springs. It was an idea in the mayor's head of what he wanted to do. If you know anything about Willow Springs about 10 years ago, this was a bombed out, truly the classic blighted case. In fact, so much so when we were going in the late 90s through the redoing of the TIF legislation and making things harder, the governor came up to Willow Springs and used Willow Springs as kind of the poster child, as you will, as to how to do it right. So we were involved in not only from the concept, we crafted the vision through a village center plan. We created the TIF district. We created the special village center plan development district that now controls how that process moves forward. And then negotiated. I was the lead consultant with a group of other consultants negotiating directly with the community over that project. Another great story of a long term, we had a probably 10-plus year relationship with the village of Wheaton, 3 TIF districts later, 2 developer recruitment processes for key sites in the downtown, the latest one being the redevelopment of the courthouse facility that you may know of as well. And, of course, some of that money has gone in not only to redevelopment and including a new train station, but on the bottom right-hand corner, rehabbing existing buildings. Of course, that's a great use of TIF funds, as well as how we can not only encourage new investment, but how we can help existing businesses do better or improve the spaces that we have for new investment. So, again, one of the things that we want to underscore and the strengths we believe of our team is why should you be thinking of the comprehensive and the TIF concurrently? Well, one, there are some very practical and tangible benefits that you're going to get is the possibility of joining these two, particularly joining these two under one roof, which would be TESCA Associates. We've given you a proposal that offers significant cost savings as a result of that because, quite frankly, if you're doing the comp plan, there's going to be some duplication in the work. We're going to be out here doing land use surveys. This doesn't take us much more effort to be able to do some of the initial eligibility and save you time and money. What you're going to get is that we're going to be able to understand your community better. And as a result of that planning process, we're bringing in a market consultant. So not only are we going to be looking at the South Westmont Business District specifically, we're going to be crafting a very specific plan based on a market analysis that's going to give us a real test of what's practical and what's reasonable. It's not going to be a guessing game, which is pretty, bubbles on a map. So the point is that there's a strong relationship between what is required in the TIF plan and what you're going to get out of the comprehensive planning process and in the comprehensive plan. So there will be a direct connection, things you can extract right into the TIF, and you don't need to duplicate. And then, of course, as I said before, you'll result in a much more detailed plan. So with that, I'm going to ask Ben Carlisle to give us a quick overview. Fred asked us, and we don't want to certainly bore you or reiterate things that you already know, but Fred reminded us, because this is being taped for public consumption, maybe it's a good idea to give just a quick thumbnail sketch of what TIF is about, and I'm going to ask Ben to run through that quickly.
Thank you, Con. Again, my name is Ben Carlisle. I'm a planner with Tesco Associates, and I will serve as the project planner on this assignment. So what I'm going to go over in the next couple slides should be old hats, everyone here, because obviously you started the process of trying to understand what TIF is. But as Con said, but for public consumption, it's important that we all start on the same page as with a basic understanding of what we're doing here. When TIF was first created in the 1950s in California, they really did themselves a disservice by using the term tax in front of the increment financing. TIF is not a tax. What it is a public funding mechanism that captures the increment in tax revenue and uses that to pay for specific projects in a specific area, but it's not a tax. It really is the ultimate public-private partnership. You're going to hear that a lot these days, the need to create public-private partnerships, and that's what TIF really is. It's really one of the only tools that municipalities have to spur private investment. The theory behind TIF is a little bit of public incentive that then in turn spurs private development, which pays for itself many times over the price of just doing a little bit of public investment. There's two kind of common myths I want to talk about in terms of TIF. One is there's a common myth that once you establish a TIF, the funds can be used for anything within the district and they can go directly to a developer to do a private building. That's simply not the case. There is limited state requirements which state what the funding use of TIF can be used for. The most common use of TIF are, one, public infrastructure, new water main, new sewer main, stormwater management. Many communities actually use TIF to fund streetscape, sidewalk improvements, urban design components. And the second typical use of TIF is for public improvement of site preparation. So demolition, property assembly, cleaning up sites in order to level the playing field so the redevelopment can occur. But again, both of those are public benefit purposes, and that's what the purpose of TIF is for public benefit. The second common myth is that all taxing districts, that they do not receive property tax revenue when a TIF is created. That simply is not true as well. How TIF works is when a TIF is established in the base year of 0, all the property tax value in that area is added up, and that forms the base. That base remains constant over the life of the 23 years. That base is the total amount that the the taxing districts can levy off of. Over time, two things occur over the life of that 23 years. One, inflation occurs. Typically, in history, it's about 2 to 3%. Lately, it's been a little bit less, but over the course of the last couple of generations, it's been about 1 or 2% a year. In addition to just normal inflation, development occurs, private development occurs. That raises the value within the district. So that change between what the base was and what the new property level is called the increment. That increment then goes into a fund that can pay for specific projects within the area. When TIF is done after 23 years, the TIF is expired, and that base then increases to what it would have been with all of the new development. That raises the amount of taxing level that the various property taxing districts can levy off of. So it's a win-win for everybody. It's a win for municipalities because they get new development. It's a win for the private sector because they get some public incentive to do development. It's also a win for the taxing districts because they get a higher base to tax off of. One thing you'll hear from me, and I'm sure Fred can attest to, is that you're in a very competitive marketplace right now. This map here shows all the surrounding communities that have TIF already in place. If not everyone, most of your surrounding communities all use TIF. So they already have a leg up in terms of being able to offer an incentive to private development. There are over 800 plus TIFs in the state of Illinois. They range in the size of a population of a community from a community of 140 people has established a TIF, all the way up to the city of Chicago, which has about 100 or so TIFs already in place. So it's a very common tool that municipalities actually utilize for investment. So you've already started to think about this question about why TIF, why now? When we think about that, we really want to think about three major questions. One is, how does TIF serve as a catalyst for development? As I said earlier, you're in a very competitive market. What can you offer for private development, incentives for private development? Con and I work with many private developers, and they'll actually say, in this marketplace now, they won't even consider going into a community that doesn't offer some sort of benefit. We understand that you do have some already, sales tax rebates, etc., but TIF is just one more tool to add to incentivize private development. We understand that not every parcel and property is going to be required TIF incentive when you're, as part of the TIF. However, as part of the redevelopment plan, we will pick out specific sites that we think are right for redevelopment and highlight those that really should start thinking about incurring with some public investment. The second question to consider is how does the TIF relate to the comprehensive plan? Con kind of already spoke to that, but the one thing I would add to that is TIF is really a natural next step to the adoption of your comprehensive plan. There has to be a rational relationship between the two, but you can use TIF to kind of kickstart the ideas and start implementing some of the very early ideas in the comprehensive plan. And lastly is, what will the Southwest Business District be in 5, 10, or 23 years? Obviously, you can see that there's been a lack of investment in that area. There's a lot of vacancies. So we can utilize TIF as a tool to kind of stem the tide there, start filling up those properties, and start incurring some private development. By state statute, the TIF is a 3-step process. However, we like to think of it as a 4-step process. The first step in the process is an eligibility determination study. What that means is that there are 13 criteria in the TIF state statute that determine if an area is TIF eligible or not. We will go parcel by parcel, building by building, analyzing the area to determine if it's TIF eligible. If it is not TIF eligible, we obviously will not move on to number 2, number 3. In your budget, we have given you a price estimate of how much the first phase would cost. It's very a nominal fee, so your upfront public investment in starting the TIF is really a low cost, especially if we can't move on to phase 2 and phase 3 if it doesn't qualify. The second phase is a redevelopment plan and program. This, again, is where we think specifically about the development process. We start doing the pro forma and costs and budget about how development would occur, what public money should be used to support private investment, et cetera. The third one is the public review and adoption process. Not only because it's required by state statute, just because we think it's important as a firm, is to include a robust and engaging public review process. One of the requirements of the TIF statute is you have to form a joint review board. What a joint review board is a board made up of a representative from every taxing body that has jurisdiction within the district. In addition, there's a public representative at large, and there's also a village representative. They get established at the very front of the process, and what they kind of serve as a checks and balance system against the village to ensure that the TIF district meets eligibility requirements. In addition, they serve as the role of ensuring that the district meets just the overall spirit and intent of the act. In addition, every year after the TIF is established, you gather the joint review board to review the financing and spending within the TIF. So again, they serve as a check and balance over the life of the 23 years. Since this is your first TIF that the village is considering, we do think that a public education component has to be a strong aspect to our proposal. We will use the typical media of literature, kind of some brochures we're going to hand out. Literature, they're involved in all the public meetings and the public hearing as well as the joint review board. But in addition, if we are considered for the comprehensive plan, we'd like to actually include some of the TIF information on the comprehensive planning project website so we can kind of meld the two together to use that as a way to display information to the public. And lastly, the fourth step, and this is not under consideration under the scope, but we'd like to be a partner with Westmont, is the implementation of the TIF. Con went over many examples of places where we've done TIF, and then we've also done follow-up work. And so we really want to be a partner with Westmont in implementing the TIF moving forward. In addition to just the overall there are specific requirements in the state statute on how you do a TIF and how you approach a TIF. In addition to just the normal state requirements for adopting a TIF, our approach is to really understand Westmont and specifically understand the South Westmont Business District well. And part of that understanding is a really understanding of the market and the competitive marketplace you're currently in. I just ran a real quick snapshot of some of the market demographics of the area. There are strong demographics. The one thing that really jumped out to Con and I is there is a huge gap in your 5-minute drive time. Drive time is kind of the way most demographics and market analysis think of an area. They think about it as the 5-minute and the 10-minute. In your 5-minute, there's a huge gap for retail. What that means is that your demand is much greater than your current supply. That's typically a good thing to have. But the question is, and we're going to use TIF to answer this question, is since there's such great demand, why is the supply not being met? There's a reason why it's not being met. We don't fully understand that yet. That's part of what we're going to do to understand what that is and use TIF to kind of close that gap and really make up the difference to really incur private development. In addition, and lastly, is we do believe in a community education and outreach. I spoke to that earlier. But since this is your first TIF, there's going to have to be a very strong public education component to this. Lastly, and I mentioned this earlier, we really want to be a partner with Westmont. Many communities actually use streetscape and wayfinding as a way to kind of kickstart their TIF, and it really is it's a flag out on your public right-of-ways that basically says, hey, look at us, development's occurring, we're putting public money in here, so it starts to kind of kickstart and bring in private development. We have done a number of TIFs that we've done actually started out. The next phase of the TIF was actually doing streetscape for them, so that's something that we're very familiar with. In addition, like I said, Con and I work very closely with the development community. We'd like to be partners with you in helping you do the developer recruitment, do the development review, and do the development negotiation. We bring that aspect to us. A lot of our practice actually works on the private side as well, so we have partnerships and other folks that we can assist in that measure. I'm not going to go over this slide. I think we've covered most everything that's on here. I think the only thing I want to highlight is the aspect of the lasting relationship. This, as well as the comprehensive plan, Con and I don't view this as a 10, 12-month assignment. We really look at this as a start of hopefully a relationship with the Village of Westmont. That's how a lot of our clients start, as a shorter project that have gone on to long-term relationships. So we really look at this as the start of a long-term relationship. I thank you for the opportunity. Again, our enthusiasm for this project is great. I'm going to invite Con back up, and we will answer any questions that the board might have.
How many projects have you got going right now?
I was just talking about on the way out. I'm wrapping one up. In fact, one was recently approved in Schiller Park for redevelopment of a property next to O'Hare Airport for an industrial mixed use. Trying to think of the other TIFs.
I'm currently, you talk TIF projects or projects in general?
Let's start with TIF projects first.
Okay. Yeah. I'm in the process personally of doing in either start or ending phase of 4 or 5 TIFs right now. Crystal Lake, a village out west called Hamilton, doing one in Wheeling. So I have about 3 or 4 or 5 right now.
And how about projects?
I'm doing 2 other downtown plans.
Can you tell me the difference between a TESCA municipal client and a TIF community?
The municipal clients are those communities where we've done more traditional planning and design projects. For instance, your neighbor Clarendon Hills some years ago, we did their downtown streetscape. And I also was involved in establishing the downtown design guidelines. We have something similar, I know that your Main Street group did. It would have been a comprehensive plan we did in the community. It would have been a rewrite of the zoning ordinance. In fact, not too far away, we recently wrapped up a comprehensive plan for Villa Park, Hanover Park, and rewrote the Hanover Park zoning ordinance. So those are the examples. There might have been landscape architecture, there might have been park design.
Yeah, some of those communities that are highlighted in red, we've done, all the ones that are highlighted in red, we've done a TIF for. Or in most of them, we actually do other work besides just a TIF work. So, for example, Bartlett, we're their ongoing continuing planner, so we've done a TIF for them. We've also do ongoing service work for them too. So, some of them are one and the same.
What do you think is going to be the largest difficulty we're going to face?
The largest difficulty you're going to face? I think Ben said it well. We don't know the community, obviously, as well as you do, and so the public education piece is going to be key. We've dealt with that before. We know how to deal with that, but getting out in front of it is the big issue. That's why brochures, website, being public like we are here, to disseminate, dispel the myths that Ben talked about is absolutely key to a successful project. Number 2, and maybe those conversations have already started, engaging the other taxing districts, most importantly the school districts, so they know, at least they know what's going on. Hopefully they'll support, and from what I've been able to learn about spending some time, particularly in the South Westmont Business District area, noticing the vacancies, the age of the businesses and such, the lack of the unity, the vacant land that you have. I mean, it would seem to me to be an easy sell to say that that this is something that's crying out for some assistance. But so trying to bring those districts in early on is going to be absolutely key as well.
Thank you.
What is the outlook for
developers that are looking for projects?
Interesting you mention it. We do engage with a number of development groups, and I think it's warming up. And I will say there's one developer I've already actually started to promote your town, even though I haven't even signed up yet, so maybe I'll send a bill later if it happens. But the gentleman, I don't, maybe I shouldn't say right now because these were just kind of private conversations at the moment, but he came to our office. We've known him, a great regional reputation, very high quality projects. And we just opened our doors and said, at no fee, we didn't charge the community for any fee. We said, come and let's talk, because we feel if we can get a developer interested in any town that we work in, it's going to be a benefit to us, because it's another built project and a successful story, and then it's a good relationship we're building there in a mutual respect. This particular developer is interested, has been said, and I think this is true from what we've heard generally, in primarily infill projects. They are not looking at any more of the greenfield projects, the Far West project, infill meaning projects within existing towns and existing locations that have municipal services and utilities where they can jump in and get something done relatively easily. So the conditions he gave us was that give me a list of the communities, and we gave him many, that have the utilities, that have the zoning in place, that understand what they want relative to a vision and a plan, don't want to be jerked around, in a public process if the community doesn't know what it wants. And then has been rightly said, and they want to know the financial incentives. Is there a TIF? Are they open to sales tax? What was the economic development approach in that community? So it was many communities like Westmont. I did talk about Westmont because of the experience we've had here recently. So we think there's a lot of promise for that. But is our door getting knocked down? Absolutely not. But I guess I can say about that, and from the reading I've read and the stuff we've seen in somewhat recent past, particularly in existing urban areas, we strongly believe those are the projects that are going to go first. So I think this point is that this conversation with that developer, I think, is a typical one of what many other developers who are kind of re-gearing themselves, because this is a developer that did some infill projects, but was also known for a lot of greenfield in some of the bigger sprawling developments around our area in Wisconsin. So it is an interesting shift.
How would you foresee balancing between when you do your initial assessment and advising what you think is appropriate versus critiquing and trying to implement something we as a board may envision? Because there may be some, you may think that we've lost our minds or we're just nuts, and then you may say here's what we think is good. So how do you balance that?
Yeah, well, look, we understanding the personality of the community and the goals and the vision is absolutely paramount. I mean, there's a lot of choices you can make within that framework, but we will say we're not going to simply roll over. If one of the benefits, as I said before, and we're going to bring in an economic market consultant. She's going to be able to tell us, the firm is Business Districts Incorporated, to tell us what the market supports for the area and what's practical. It's not only looking at numbers, but looking at practical issues. What's happening in the retail industry? What's going on? So I was coming out of the office today, another planner in the office reminded me as I was going to put, it was interesting, I was going to put a picture of a Barnes & Noble up here as an example of some hope for development. She said, no, not a good idea, because Barnes & Noble not likely going to be around. Oh yeah, good point. So it's stuff like that. She has a finger on the pulse of what works, who's doing what. I even read an article recently about even the bigger guys are beginning to have trouble. And so what's the next wave of development? And we've seen the wave in the last 10 years. I've been involved in typical big box and in power centers. I've been involved in developing and planning for lifestyle centers. You may know Deer Park. I'm the planner for Deer Park, have been since the early 90s. It still, thank God, is one of the most successful lifestyle centers in the area. Yeah,
I drive way up there.
But go to Algonquin and Geneva, they're not doing, from what I've been told, not doing quite as well. So, great concept may not any longer be what is sustainable. We don't know. But that's the kind of thing that the value added, I think we can bring to it.
in a perfect world, we hire you, what kind of time frame are we looking at? Like
Well,
the see results and the see things happen and things like that.
Well, there is the piece, and we alluded to earlier, is establishing the vision in the plan is the first piece. And the fact that you're engaging into a comprehensive planning process is very important. So that needs to happen. There's going to be some lead time to develop the vision and get a concept for what you want before you really begin to know how you're going to put that Southwest Mont Business District together. That may take 4 to 6 months just to get to that point, after which, and then during that time, as we said before, if we were to be retained, we could start the eligibility, so we can shortcut the TIF process by doing that concurrently, so that when you're ready to create the redevelopment plan and program, we'll have that done, you can move into the public. And I think after that, you could get it done in a 4-month time frame. So once you're at that point, so we're probably talking, I don't know, I've been guessing 10 months. So is it target?
In an ideal world, without the comprehensive plan, you can get a TIF done in 4 to 6 months.
Right.
There are specific state requirements in terms of timing of notification, et cetera, that kind of delays it out a little bit. But in a best case world, 4 to 6 months. But on top, like with the comprehensive plan, I think 10 to 12 months would be about the right time frame. And then once the TIF's established, depending on what development's going on, depending on how you want to structure some financing options, you can use TIF right away. It can be a development tool right away. The beauty of TIF, though, is it doesn't require the municipality to either pay for development up front, and it doesn't require the use of general funds. It allows you the option to wait for development to occur, build up some money, and then kind of what they call pay-as-you-go option. But if there is incremental development occurring, you can capture that right away. You can use money right away to start doing projects.
And also for public consumption, the great thing about TIF is that you can recoup the cost of the study itself and any other related studies as a part of this. So this, in essence, doesn't cost you anything. There's another piece of what Ben was talking about. Now I'm going to blank. What was your question again? It was related to your question.
Mine?
Yeah.
Oh, just in a perfect world, how long would it take to see the redevelopment and see everything?
Oh, yes. Okay. My point, another point I wanted to make is that if we had a developer hot, ready to go, we could accelerate this process. So that 6 months I talked about, we'll focus our energy and move that forward as quickly as possible to get the plan in place and work with you. So, I said typically 6 months. If there's something ready to go, we can make it happen sooner. As Ben said, typically, if something were ready to go tomorrow, we had a somewhat decent vision, you can get it done in 4 to 6 months. So.
Will you be able to assist with required reporting for state compliance? Would you be able to assist our staff?
Yeah, I'm doing that for a couple of municipalities right now.
So that would be sort of included kind of thing?
Not included in this price.
No, but it's...
But you have the resources, you'd be able to do it.
It's a very nominal fee. I think we're charging anywhere from $3,000 to $7,000 a year to do it. I'm doing it for Lake Forest and some other communities too right now, so we're familiar with what the requirements are. The only thing, the major difficulty of that actually is the reconvening of the joint review board, because over the life of the 23 years, people change and lose interest, etc. So that's usually the biggest hurdle, is to get everyone together. But it's fairly easy.
Say, for instance, as you're going along with this, and by chance you would get both ends of this project, comprehensive plan and the TIF, as we start going through the comprehensive plan, if you would happen to see another section based on what we're looking at that you would suggest to be TIF, would you suggest that to us?
Oh, absolutely.
Now, the other thing is, of course, I'm sure you've already been made aware, at one point, our property down in the Southwest Mont Business District, the 9.5 acres, we had some that was very interested in it, and since that period of time, they've kind of gone away. Now, let's say, for instance, all of a sudden they pop up and decide they want to jump into this game. Now, does that change? I mean, granted, you haven't looked at everything yet, but how would that change the game plan by having something like that go in almost into the center of where this district's going to be laid?
Well, there's a couple issues that you're raising. One of which I tried to respond to earlier, that if there's a project, someone ready to go walks in tomorrow and say, I got a hot project, I think it makes sense. we can accelerate the planning process to move that project through the TIF. So that won't be an issue in terms of any significant delay. The other piece that what I hear you're raising is how does the project fit? In essence, right? I mean, it's two questions. How does the project fit relative to the market? Demand for the project, does it make sense? Is it feasible? Particularly if they're asking for TIF assistance, you're going to want to know, because you're an investor. I mean, what they're asking for is you're becoming a partner as a result of the financial assistance you're giving. This is an automatic partnership. So you're investing in this project. So you're going to have an equal interest in making sure that it's going to be successful over the long term, not just a flash in the pan idea. Ben was talking to someone on the way out here about another project in Crystal Lake where the developer wants $3 million up front. Well, maybe not. We want to see some performance before you walk away with some significant dollars. But the issue of the fit is a community policy issue, and that's best handled within the context of the comprehensive plan. But as I said, if that happened, we can accelerate and shift the focus. And move that. We have several sub areas that we've identified in our proposal for your comp plan. We're going to study specifically downtown being one, and other areas. We can accelerate that and move that up in the agenda, if you will, do that. But I would still certainly recommend that there be some kind of public engagement with you, Plan Commission, with members of the community. We'll commit to doing it earlier than later.
Yeah, and if that's the case, obviously, because there has to be a relationship between the TIF as well as the comprehensive plan, we can't adopt the TIF necessarily before we do the comprehensive plan. But if that's the case, we really want to try to capture that new development. So we want to try to get the TIF in place before that new development gets put on the property roll. So it's in all of our best interest, if necessary, to move the process up forward.
So in essence, if this big box retailer were to come in, or any big box retailer, whoever it would be more advantageous for us at this point in time to get the comprehensive plan put in place, get the TIF overlay in that district before we allow them to go in and do any work on that property? Is it more advantageous for us to get this stuff put in place instead of, say, next week all of a sudden they call and decide they want to go ahead and start building down there?
No, not necessarily. But let me try to clarify that. The point I try to make is it's important that we engage the community in a process to understand what you want, so that when any developer brings a proposal forward, it fits with the market, it makes sense financially, and it's consistent with what the community vision is. What we're saying is, and the other part of this, especially in this economy, you don't look twice at a real development proposal walking in your door. You don't tell a developer, a year from now, 18 months from now, maybe we'll think about you. Because the concern will be, and we know of some in particular that you're thinking about, they have choices. And they're going to go elsewhere. So no, I would not tell a developer, wait 18 months and let us figure this out. We are committing to say, we will work with you, we will accelerate the process if you work with us, and we're committed to getting it done. That's what.
You're talking about all the positive aspects of a TIF project.
Yeah.
What about some of the negatives? What if you have a community that objects? What if you have a lot of objection from the other taxing bodies in the community?
Right.
How long does it take to overcome these? How many projects have been either stalled or not carried out to completion because of that negativity? An example I'm thinking of, and I don't know whether you worked on it or not, but the TIF project in Clarendon Hills, where they condemned property on Ogden Avenue for the Infinity car dealership, which we understand is going to go in there.
Right.
There was a lot of negativity surrounding that proposal. How is that type of situation handled? And do some projects they give up because they can't get through all the negativism that pops up? Right.
I understand that can happen. I will tell you there's only one instance in the TIF project I was involved in. It's a complicated story where the community essentially rose up and said, no, we're just not going to take that road, and the board finally walked away. But there was only one in the 30 years I've been doing this in the firm's history. The point is, we build up front, and what Ben said and what I want to underscore is that we very much believe in engaging the community up front and understanding what TIF is, what the benefits are, what, if any, downsides, what any questions they have in dealing with that all up front through the community education process. Things like a simple brochure can go out. We've done other things like that to engage the community. And then the taxing districts. Now, having said that, does that mean no one will show up at a public hearing and complain? No, that's likely going to happen. And we engage these people professionally. We respond to their questions as best we can. I mean, and acknowledge their concerns, and to the extent that we can modify the plan to acknowledge it, we will do so. It's like, quite frankly, any other way I'd handle any other zoning issue, that it might be dealing with in the community. So we're committed to make that happen. Can it delay the process? Certainly it could, because you are the decision makers. And if you're not comfortable in the end making that decision because the community is up in arms, then yes, it could delay the process. But what, in my experience, a couple months delay, if the developer, I mean, the whole issue here is, will a developer be discouraged if this bubbles up and becomes a major nightmare of an issue? He could be. But if we go through this process, we work closely with the developer in the process, and we, as a team, move through and collaborate, we think that's very important in keeping the developer's interest in this as well. But my point is, developers are seasoned. They know this routine. And they go through this all the time. So I think there's a plan B. Most developers have a plan B. If they want to be in your town, and usually when they make the decision, they want to be there. There has to be usually a compelling, the point is if they walked into your door, there's a very compelling reason why they want to be in Westmont, for instance. So they're not likely going to be discouraged over a couple extra meetings. If this went on for 6 months or a year, the handwriting's probably on the wall by then, and we may lose that deal. But our hope is that we're going to be able to overcome that very early on and deal with those questions before, or maybe at least simultaneously, with a developer, if the proposal comes forward.
And to be honest, in most of our experience, it's not the creation of TIF that causes uproar. It's a lot of times the public policies associated with that, the use of condemnation, how you spend your money. TIF can be structured in such a way to be very conservative on behalf of the municipality. It's really a public policy decision that we will help you and walk you through on how to make these decisions and advise you on that. But really, again, it's a miseducation about how TIF works that we often find is the problem, and then associated peripheral public policies attached to it.
If you were selected just for the TIF and not the comprehensive, according to your intro, the state statute requires the comprehensive plan to be done first. What does that do for you? Are you going to have to hold off now until we have a comprehensive for you to go to?
Well, there's a couple ways. Let me see if I can segment this. If we were only to do the TIF, then yes, we would be beholden on whatever consultant you're working with to establish the plan, because the plan is what is then ultimately referenced within the TIF document, for which we then take and expand to create a full program with detailed cost and financial projections. So we do need that piece before you can move into that. The benefit we bring is that when we're working on your comprehensive plan, we can accelerate the process to move the development through quicker, and for the South Westmont Business District, we can accelerate the planning for that area and move it up front in the process. So we can get that work done, and I've done this in other communities where you can adopt that element of your plan as an amendment to your current plan, and without having to complete the entire comprehensive planning process. So you can do that, get it done, adopt it as an amendment to your comprehensive plan, move on, let the TIF move on, and then let the rest of the comprehensive planning process.
So there is a way of getting the TIF
You bet. Believe me, we'll make it happen.
Can you just take a moment and talk a little bit about current and proposed legislation that might impact TIF districts?
Yeah, the most pressing one, and it's in committee now, and it hasn't been elevated, but it's been on the books for discussion for a while, is it's kind of confusing. I'll try to explain it. Basically, what they're saying is that every year as I said before, you have your normal inflation as well as your new development. Basically, every year you have to recalculate your EAV based on your inflation rate, so you don't capture the normal inflation rate. So really, the only way TIF works is if you get new development occurring, you don't get the natural inflation that would normally occur. So that's the legislation that's on the books right now. So really, it would be a pretty big hindrance to TIF creation if you just don't get the normal, especially early up front, where you're in your first 5 years, you're maybe only working off inflation.
Okay, but it's likely that we would be grandfathered if...
It's been in committee for a year now. There was some discussion last year about trying to get it done quicker than later. We're members of the state TIF association, so they keep us abreast on upcoming legislation. This is not on in the immediate future, but again, it's it's in your best interest to get it done sooner than later.
So there is some sense of urgency.
Yeah, and my sense is, just based on what's happened in the past, a lot of these changes do tend to grandfather in existing districts. If you look in the past legislation, there's a lot of, TIFs created before 1999 don't have to comply with, X, Y, and Z. So that's probably a good chance, but I don't know.
Any more questions?
I think one of the things you've talked about was how this TIF could be used like for roadways. And on 63rd, we don't own it. Would we still be able to, if we have to do a middle turn lane? Because I know the county wants that middle turn lane.
Absolutely.
So then it wouldn't be beholding to the developer to have to do it. We could be pulling it off this TIF. And
you could pull it off the TIF depending on how you negotiate the deal with the developer. You might be paying for that and then reimburse later for it. And that's probably most likely when it takes a while for the increment to build up.
It doesn't have to be village-owned property.
No.
But one of the I know you formulate the districts or the boundaries of your Southwest Westmont business district now, but when you go forward and start thinking about the study area, you want to try to capture all the public right-of-ways. So there's really some strategy behind where you actually map the district, because you want to include all the properties you think you might want to use money for. So for example, you might want to include the intersection of Cass Avenue and 63rd, because you might want to do infrastructure improvements or new lights or et cetera. So you want to capture that. So there's some strategy we'll think about with you in terms of how you want to, what properties you want to include.
The county won't let us put cameras there. That's what it's question. They don't want us to touch that intersection. So
that's a jurisdiction issue, not a funding issue.
The
other thing that's not as well known, but is also true, if there are extensions of utility to the area, even though they exist outside the area, but you're taking utilities to the area, those, and the purpose is to serve the area, even though they're outside, TIF funds can be used to extend utilities or improvements to a district, even though it's technically outside the district.
Can TIF funds be used to pay down debt that the municipality has on existing property within the district?
You mean like the parcel on 63rd?
Honestly,
Maybe a really good TIF consultant could figure out a way to do that.
No.
I think that has something to do with the agreement you have with that developer. Ultimately, no, I'd have to.
You can pay down the interest costs. I don't know about the actual purchase price itself. That's what you're asking.
Well, reimbursement, basically, the understanding is anything that's pre-TIF or pre the resolution of intent is not an eligible reimbursable cost. That's why when you establish the resolution of intent to move forward, which if you do, I'd suggest getting that done sooner than later. You would specify up front, planning studies, other things, any kinds of improvements that you're planning that might be in the works prior to the actual TIF district being, the actual ordinance being adopted. So if there's a 6 months lag, or we're talking 10-month lag, if you have projects in the works, you want to get that established in your resolution, those could be eligible. But anything that was done with your purchase price previously, those kinds of things, no. But again, depending on how you structure the deal with the developer, that can all be assumption, worked out in the end.
That's good.
Okay. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions from the public?
May I ask a question?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Justin Shire. The mayor touched on a little bit with the challenges in actually trying to get to the implementation of the TIF district. What I'm wondering is if you were involved in or you're aware of an unsuccessful TIF district after it's been created and actually operating, and if so, what the challenges were in that TIF district, why you think it was not successful.
Justin, would you come up to the microphone because we're recording this?
Sure. I'm going to re-ask the question.
Brief synopsis.
The question I just asked was, the mayor touched on the challenges that go into actually getting the TIF district sort of accepted by the public, so going on public education and those types of things. My question is, after the TIF district is established, have you been involved with, or are you aware of TIF districts that have been established and just have not been successful? And if so, what are the challenges that you saw with those districts? And in your opinion, I guess, why do you believe those districts were not successful?
The only way, quite frankly, a TIF district cannot be successful is because of the financial arrangements that went into the development that was approved as a part of that. TIF in its pure form has been talked about. It's based on seeing a continuing increase in the EAV of the property and excuse me, I should turn that. And in the increased taxes as a result of that. In most cases, our advice to communities when they go into development deals, unless they're very solid and very solid, from a retail and financial perspective, is to set up what we call a pay-as-you-go system. So that what happens is that the onus is on the developer to front the money. This is the issue. It's who's fronting the money, who's holding the money, who's carrying the interest costs. That's usually the problem. One case I'm aware of, I don't know intimately, is in Sugar Grove. It seemed to be a poster child for a project they did many, many years ago around their airport, where there was a lot of upfront public investment in infrastructure, in roads. Development didn't happen. So they floated bonds, incurred debt, and they didn't have, the increment to pay for it back, and they had to go to their general fund or other sources to do that. Now, of course, there's other safety valves that that would protect the general fund. So we would never suggest doing that either. So it is in how you structure the deal. I'm not saying that there never should be a deal based on the potential upfront bonding or assistance. If it's a very strong deal, we're very confident that it can move forward. But generally, the projects that are doing well and that are being successful are those that are basically developer-driven, where the developer fronts the money, and the agreement is structured such that he gets paid back as his development performs over time. So the increment that's generated is a result of the fact that his project is generating it, and the village, not in all cases gives all of the increment, but gives him a schedule of how he'll be reimbursed over time for that investment. So the point is, the developer goes out, he may sell bonds or do whatever to bring his investors to the table, but ultimately it's his risk. And if development goes south, there's no risk to the village if development just shuts down and there's a lot of vacancies in the space because there's no investment that you've made into the project from your general fund. So it'll unfortunately, it won't go anywhere. There won't be the improvements you want, but conversely, you're not holding the bag, with carrying high interest costs.
So the concept is to limit initial public investment, allow the private investment, the private developer to drive the incremental increase in the property
Generally,
tax,
that's true. Again, I would not use that 100%. There are different deals, different reasons to structure deals differently based on the project. Look, if you got a Walmart or a Sam's Club, the strength of the strength of a retailer like that, there's not much question. They're likely going to be around. If there's a John Doe, that you never heard of before, that says, "Hey, I got a great deal. I'm going to build you this building," and clearly has no experience. No, you're not going to do that.
Can I ask one more question? I know that we're on a time crunch. Is that all right? If I ask one more question?
Yeah, we're going to have that'll be the last question. We've got to get on to our next presentation.
One of the other questions I had on this was, there's sort of a array of potential options with the property, ranging, I guess, from a big box type retail development to something different, something unique. In your experience, do you find one more preferable in a TIF district versus another? Is there a particular retail focus that you think does better in a TIF district?
The answer is absolutely not. It is all a function of what the market, what works from a point of view of the market and what can be supported financially. So TIF, we've done strip centers, we've done downtown, a lot of downtown mixed-use projects. You've seen several of them in our show. So they range. In fact, you can go to the Illinois Tax Increment Financing site and you can see the different types of TIFs that have been done for lots. In fact, industrial TIFs are another application. So there's numbers of uses.
And the difference between the comprehensive plan and the TIF redevelopment plan is that you don't get necessarily into specifics about the types of land uses in the redevelopment plan for the TIF. So it's very flexible in terms of the types of uses that it's allowed. So it allows that flexibility going forward.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Back to you at a later date
All right.
regarding the decisions of
Actually, we'll be seeing you next week.
Next week.
So hopefully you want us back.
Okay.
About a 6 or 7 minute break.
Right.
Yeah, that sounds good. Sounds good.
Reconvene. Fred, would you like to introduce our next group of speakers?
Be happy to, Your Honor. Our next presenter is the firm of S.B. Friedman and Company. Mr. Friedman is here to introduce the members of his team, and looks like we need just about another 10 seconds here to get the computer up operational. So while Mr. Friedman is giving his introduction, perhaps Jewel can get things to the point of readiness.
Opening. Okay. Well, thank you very much. We're very glad to be here today. My name's Steve Friedman, and I'm the president of S.B. Friedman and Company. With me today is Jewel Walton, who's a project manager at S.B. Friedman and Company, and Tom Baer, who's a partner with the law firm of Klein, Thorpe and Jenkins. And we'll share just a little bit about each firm and why we teamed it this way, and then we'll talk about the approach that we're proposing to take, and the work plan process in some of our experience. Our firm has been in existence for 20 years. We started out basically with roots in both real estate economics and public planning. Some years ago, I was lucky enough to have the Commissioner of Planning in the City of Chicago say that I was one of the few people she knew who really understood both the public and the private sides of development problems and of real estate development issues. So we brought that into the firm. I brought that into the firm, and that's become the core of our firm. We focus on public-private partnerships. And part of that is the creation of the districts, the kinds of districts and tools that are necessary to make those partnerships come to fruition, and tax increment financing is the preeminent tool available to us today and under the control of local government with which to do that. Jewel, do you want to take a minute to tell a little about yourself?
Sure. I'm a project manager with S.B. Friedman and Company. In July of this year, it'll be 8 years that I've been with the firm. I've done approximately 10 designations, TIF designations in my time there throughout Chicago and the suburbs, and also including 5 in the city of Rockford alone. And I will be, assuming that we are hired, I will be the project manager overseeing the designation study.
I'm Tom Baer. I'm a partner with Klein, Thorpe and Jenkins. The reason that I'm involved in the project with S.B. Friedman, I've done a lot of TIF work, TIF redevelopment work, forming TIFs, special counsel just doing redevelopment agreements. And Steve had asked me to partner with them, not so much in the creation mode, but there were certain aspects of the proposal that indicated that you would be seeking advice in regard to redevelopment agreements and or the filing of the annual report and some of the information that would be in there. And both of those areas are an area of specialty for me, and therefore we felt that that would round out the proposal to have all aspects covered.
We've worked with Klein, Thorpe and Jenkins and Tom for about 10 years in a number of communities. And part of this is your first TIF. There are a number of procedures that you'll need to understand and to carry out in a very precise way as we do this. And we've never found anybody who is more specific about how you do those procedures than Tom, and makes him a pleasure to work with and makes things go really smoothly. And one of the things that's, I think, also important is that as a firm, we're deeply involved in the area of public-private partnerships, and not only working with clients, but also trying to help advance the science or the practice through a number of kinds of relationships. So we're active in the Illinois Tax Increment Association. One of our practice leaders is a board member. I'm serving on a legislative committee trying to craft new legislation or enhance the legislation. We also are active in a national organization called the Council of Development Finance Agencies, or CDFA, which we serve as their national TIF advisor. And so we have helped to write best practices manuals and guides that are used nationally in this field. And then on our real estate side, we're deeply involved with the Urban Land Institute, whose mission is to help encourage the best use and the proper use of land and to provide best practices. And I've been very involved both nationally and locally, and that helps us to understand the things that we can bring to a site and the elements of both economic and physical issues that are part of getting a good development of an area. So we integrate those things in our practice. So Jewel, would you like to go ahead and talk about the project?
Sure. What we received from the RFP that was issued for the assignment, and this is just rounds out our project understanding, is that the Southwest Westmont Business District has generally lagged behind the growth and development of downtown Westmont and Ogden Avenue. I know Ogden Avenue is characterized with a couple of dealerships along that area, and then downtown Westmont, primarily along Cass Avenue, has developed quite well with retail and residential mixed-use development. So you're interested in stimulating more investment in the Southwestmont Business District and looking at TIF as an option to stimulate redevelopment. As Steve mentioned before, our understanding that this is your first TIF district that you're pursuing, and looking to potentially use that to redevelop a site that you own and control, at least in the study area. My understanding is also that it's the largest undeveloped parcel in the village, and hopefully the redevelopment of that parcel will spur redevelopment throughout the balance of the TIF district. Also, through the redevelopment agreement, I gleaned that you were looking to protect the investment, whether that's through the disposition of land and putting it in the hands of the right developer, and also adequate protections within the redevelopment agreement. For instance, in the event that a development goes dark, that you're well protected in terms of any TIF investment that's made. So some of the key aspects to our approach, I've kind of divided this into two areas. As far as the TIF designation, we do parcel by parcel data collection. That's recording eligibility factors on field sheets. That's also doing the analysis in an access database and looking at the distribution of factors, not necessarily sandwiched in one area, but throughout the balance of the district, we look at distribution. Our analysis is defensible in an event of someone and everything that's attempting everything to derail the TIF, which we've been a part of at least 2 or 3 TIF defenses. We have GIS capabilities where we map all of the eligibility factors by parcel to, again, look at the distribution. And we also work with the community as well as the village to develop appropriate goals and objectives for the redevelopment area and for the plan. Every community is different, and certainly we follow the regulations outlined in the TIF statute of public meetings or public hearings that may be required. But in the event that you're looking to do more outreach to the community, we could work with you certainly to develop the best strategy to reach out to Westmont residents. The second portion of it is more related to the deal structuring. If in going into a redevelopment agreement, we would propose to do a thorough examination of the development proposal and looking at pro forma. Certainly, we're not looking to give away more money or distribute more money that's needed or necessary within a development. And we look at adequate returns, whether the developer is padding numbers in a sense or if it's fair returns to the developer with the investment that's involved. Do projections of incremental taxes that support the redevelopment. Sometimes that's in the vein of providing a developer note or for support of bonds. And then our approach to a redevelopment agreement is first negotiating business terms within a term sheet. That sets the framework for a redevelopment agreement, and then those are items that Tom would take and memorialize that into the legal document. Our firm is more than just TIF designation. We approach development in a more holistic way, where, as you see the three-legged stool on the screen there, we believe there's three prongs to a successful project. That's economic feasibility, site capacity, and community goals. And we approach just about every project with those goals in mind. We look at the market and financial feasibility of a project. And I've seen in communities several times where the community gets caught up in a pretty picture. And it's important to know the backing behind that. What's the development phasing? What's the financing that's in place? What's the average time on market going to be? What's the demographic support that even supports new tenants or new residents moving in? Development strategy and implementation. What are the tools that are in place to bring that development to the forefront? Can it be sustained? What impact ultimately will it have on the community? And then developer solicitation is marketing the site in an appropriate way to developers that matches up with the community goals and looking for the right developer for the particular site. We're abreast of certain market assessment changes that are happening in DuPage County currently. We understand site capacity and development phasing and absorption. And as far as the developer solicitation process, we manage and maintain several solid relationships with multiple developers throughout the Chicagoland area. To highlight some of our project experience, we've had a great opportunity to work with neighbors to the east and the west of you. To the east, Clarendon Hills, we worked on the Ogden Avenue TIF. It began with a redevelopment strategy for 11 parcels, their frontage along Ogden Avenue. Through that report, we determined that a car dealership, mainly because of the size and dimensions of the site and the locations of other dealerships that were in the area, we determined most likely a high-end car dealership was feasible for the site. As a result of that study, the TIF designation study was prepared and approved in 2005. And just recently, in the fall of 2010, the village approved plans for an Infiniti dealership to go along on Ogden Avenue, taking up the Mayflower Hotel and I believe classic casual furniture along that stretch of Ogden Avenue. And Klein, Thorpe, and Jenkins served as counsel on that particular project. For Bensonville, we assisted in the closeout of the downtown TIF that they had, and part of that TIF was actually folded into a larger TIF district that covered the industrial area, which was about 800 parcels, and with the main goal of having TIF increment pay for infrastructure improvements that were desperately needed in that area. So we prepared projections to estimate that capacity. And there was a lot of consensus building. Actually, this project is ongoing. A lot of consensus building between the affected taxing districts. And there were some concerns with the downtown TIF, even though that was closed out, there was concerns about their budget and their capacity moving forward. So there was a lot of discussions and meetings and reviews of projections to look at potential opportunities for revenue sharing. And again, Kleinthorpe Jenkins is serving as special TIF counsel on that assignment. The First Street TIF in St. Charles was created in 2002 to help revitalize underserved area within the downtown. We assisted the village in soliciting a developer for a 7-acre site that they owned within the district. And as a result, there was a replacement store built for a boutique-type grocery store in the area, as well as some of the retail space that was constructed and a parking garage, as a result of the TIF. Palatine Road TIF, Rand Road TIF in Palatine was another TIF district that we created. Intent was to revitalize an older commercial strip that way. And since its inception, we've conducted deal reviews that help in attracting or redeveloping Walmart, Harley-Davidson, Aldi, as well as Arlington Toyota. And my understanding is that the Arlington Toyota is the largest Toyota dealership in the state of Illinois. City of Sterling, this is not in the Chicagoland area, but this is in Whiteside County in Illinois. We helped establish a TIF district there to attract big box retail. It was a former Walmart site, and they were looking for the developer there who constructed a Kohl's and a Petco was interested in having TIF and sales tax to help with the redevelopment there. So we prepared sales tax projections and as well as TIF projections as part of a bond feasibility study that was used for recovery zone facility bonds that helped spur that development. And our neighbor to the west of you, Downers Grove, we assisted them with a downtown redevelopment strategy, which mainly consisted of preparing projections and helping with developer solicitation for an area called the Curtis Block. And we helped look at various redevelopment options and the potential public assistance that was necessary for those various options. And provided TIF projections to see what was potentially available for other development projects that were expected in the future and later in the TIF district. Some other deal reviews that we've conducted in the suburbs and then also within the city of Chicago include Roselle. We examined returns and pro forma estimates for a mixed-use development within Roselle. The St. Charles Town Center, which I spoke of a little bit earlier, that also consisted of a deal review looking at potential returns and TIF assistance for the mixed-use development there. The Wheeling Weston Hotel, which is featured the first image that you see there, where our U.S. Senator Kirk actually had his election day rally party. We assisted in bond projections for the development of the hotel. And then within the city of Chicago, most specifically retail and commercial development, we've worked on Marshfield Plaza, which is at 119th in Marshfield, right off the Dan Ryan Expressway, where they have a Target and a Jewel and Anna's Lennox and an LA Fitness that was there. It amounts to about 440,000 square feet of retail that was there, and we worked on the deal review and negotiations for that project. Inglewood Food for Less, which is actually a project that I worked on and pretty proud of, within a food desert in the Inglewood neighborhood of Chicago. They were able to secure a Food for Less grocery store and an adjoining shopping center at 69th and Ashland. And then also the Green Exchange, which is a adaptive reuse project on the city's north northwest side. I think it's Logan Square neighborhood, where it's a commercial building that will feature green sensitive and environmentally sensitive businesses, as well as artist live workspace and other offices that are geared toward green infrastructure and environmentally sensitive issues. And that we used a HUD 108 loan in combination with TIF that's ultimately backed by CDBG funds to help move that stalled development project forward. This is just part of our portfolio more than anything, even though that wasn't necessarily specified in the RFP. We offer developer solicitation services, and two notable places as in the city of Park Ridge and the city of Des Plaines, where we issued an RFQ/P to developers and have either they've been awarded for excellence by organizations such as the American Planning Association and the Congress for New Urbanism, or at least in City of Des Plaines place honorable mention. The Park Ridge began with evaluating development potential for city-owned land there. We issued the RFQ-P based on the findings of that development potential assignment. The project ultimately produced $120 million of value to the city of Park Ridge. And again, it was won awards in 2008 from APA and the Congress for New Urbanism. Des Plaines started with a market analysis and plan that was done in conjunction. SB Friedman and Company, as well as Lakota, did the initial concept plan. The RFQ was drafted, issued. I believe there was five respondents for that RFQ. And as a result, there was new retail that was developed, 180 units of housing, and a public library that was built. So I'm going to open it up for questions, and certainly I, as well as Steve and Tom, are available to answer any questions you may have on our experience or approach.
What difficulties do you see in this community? Or what do you think the biggest difficulty we'll have is?
Well, I don't, we'll learn more about your community as we go. There are a number of issues that we see come up in both the creation of a TIF and then in the execution of the TIF and trying to actually bring development to the site. In the creation of a TIF, we see a lot of people who think that this is an increase in taxes. We see overlying taxing bodies, which it is not. It is not directly. It would be disingenuous to say that it doesn't, in some slightly marginal way, increase taxes, because whatever you spend in the public sector, some you have to tax for somewhere. But it is the same tax is paid within the TIF as elsewhere. So the question is whether you really need to do this redevelopment. And so big issue is, an issue is often selling people and making people really understand that you need to have this tool available in order to be able to redevelop a site, that there are extraordinary costs, that there may be extraordinary costs involved, there may be a need for site acquisition, additional site acquisition, there may be need for incentive, particularly with retailers. We know we often are using the sales tax as an incentive to compete with other communities. So there's a lot of education that is often involved in having people come to understand why we need to use this tool and create this tool. The second area is the issues that occur when you actually go to implement. It took, as you know, Clarendon Hills 5 years, or 4 or 5 years from the time we created the TIF to the time they were actually able to close a transaction. Part of that is the complexity of real estate cycles, the complexity of economic cycles. Part of it was, of course, in their case, the Mayflower itself, which was not exactly an easy acquisition. You have a great advantage in that you have a large site. It may not be quite large enough in some cases for some uses, and that may be part of what TIF can help you to address. But there are those sorts of issues in the economic and the real estate cycles. We are struggling in the retail world. We used to have what people would call the Noah's Ark approach to retailing. You had 2x2. You had Best Buy and Circuit City, Bed Bath & Beyond, and Linens and things. Now we have only one. So our number of stores that are out there to attract, if it's a retail environment that is the key goal or the practical goal, can be more challenging and more daunting as you go to the implementation side of the equation. So those are some of the challenges that we've encountered, and the overlying taxing bodies, one that we just finished dealing with in Bensonville. Tom was instrumental in working that through. That TIF has been approved, right?
Yes.
And we made a deal with the overlying taxing bodies to both protect a core of increment that was necessary to do the minimum infrastructure, and then to share. So these are all things that we've encountered, and that we may well encounter some or all of those in your environment.
What about difficulties with public participation in it?
Well, public participation in terms of the creation process is very much a local option. Different communities like to do different things. In Clarendon Hills, we did some focus groups, we did a community meeting, we did some voting, and some of that was in relationship to the redevelopment strategy, some was in relationship to TIF itself. And we have used many different techniques to work with communities, and each community is different. You can go to some communities. Des Plaines, for example, we worked on that project. We showed our site analysis to the mayor. That was an existing TIF. We showed our site analysis to the mayor. The mayor said, "Where do you pick up the garbage?" We knew where you picked up the garbage because when we work on projects, that's part of the physical site capacity. So we said, right there. We pointed to it. He looked at it. He said, "Okay, let's go." Now that's one political culture. That's not a very common one. I see that one also in Vernon Hills. Roger Byrne has a pretty moving operation. Everywhere else, it's a lot of community meetings, and often. So you use different techniques in different communities, and we work that out for the temperament of the community. Each community is really different. Each suburb is different. We've worked over the years in about 50 suburbs, and probably I could find 2 or 3 that are the same, but they're not in the same part of the region. You have, like, if you go up to Vernon Hills, Libertyville, Lincolnshire, the cultures are totally different. We've worked for all of them. So it varies where you are and how you do it. So we use a lot of techniques. We've done walking tours with people to help them see first of all, to see the sites or the areas through their eyes. We want to see it through their eyes, but also to help educate them as to this isn't all it could be. There are problems here. We've used lots of community meeting techniques with small groups. We've used, occasionally we use dot voting, depends on the circumstances. If you're trying to rate what people think are the most important issues, that's sometimes helpful. We've used those little electronic gadgets for voting on things too, and it just depends. We have a pretty broad repertoire of techniques we can use, and we work it out with each community because there's no two communities that are really the same in that regard.
If I could, Steve had mentioned about the Bensonville scenario. One thing I would always recommend is to reach out to the other taxing districts very early on in the process. Make them feel like you're not thrusting it upon them, but you're making them a partner in understanding why this is important to the community and how they will benefit from it. By doing that, Bensonville was able to early on get the taxing districts on board as opposed to being the leading force in objecting to the TIF. So contacting and interacting with the other taxing districts is very key to moving forward with any TIF proposal.
Mr. Friedman, did you do the Village Center in Burr Ridge?
We did some fiscal analysis for them, and we did a little bit of market analysis for a second phase. But we didn't have that much to do with the core of that development.
Well, I was curious as to whether a development like that versus, a standalone big box, is that something that, if you've had those type of developments, was it something that you came up with and recommended, or was it something that the municipality came up with and you helped them implement?
It varies on where the community. So in the case of Park Ridge, which that development is finished, by the way, I'm sorry we didn't bring a graphic or an image of the completed development. That's a rendering. The case of Park Ridge, a great deal of our analysis focused on the market potential for that site. The city council had the idea that they wanted to create a lifestyle center, and we kept trying to explain to them that when you added retail here with the other retail in the downtown, the whole downtown would become the lifestyle center because they had retail. So we validated the kind and the nature and the character of the retail for which there was potential, and that was included in our RFQP. Market analysis is one of our core competencies of the firm. We also have the capability of doing what's called gravity modeling, and this is something that we did actually in another place in Des Plaines in an area called Five Corners, which is probably one of the most controversial things that we've touched in the last 5 years. It makes Bensonville look like a piece of cake, and that was a certain amount.
I'm defending that case, so please watch what you say.
Which one? You
Five Corners.
You were involved in Five Corners, so you know Five Corners is very controversial. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of issues with land acquisition and so on. But as part of the work that we did there, and it was planning work, we did gravity modeling to look at what kind of what kind of retail could be attracted and could be supported at the site. Now, gravity modeling is a tool that uses travel time, population, income, sales propensity to buy things, and then it looks at the competition and it reconciles all those things using a very powerful computer model. And the model we use is from ESRI, the Environmental Systems Research Institute, which is the main GIS provider in the country, and we believe the state-of-the-art tool. So it allows us to use travel time to look at where you can draw from and what kind of capture you can have. So in that particular case, you've probably seen the summary of the studies, which showed X dollars a square foot for, in this case, a discount department store was really modeled on Target, and we have that capability as well. So it just depends what we're working on, what the scope is to look at that. So in this case, the first thing you'd want to look at is what kind of pitch, what's the level that this site can tap into. So is this site that would be suitable based on the demographics and the density of population and the incomes of population? What is it going to be able to compete in the retail marketplace for? That's the way you would, I think, begin to approach that.
At what part of the phase, as you're developing it and doing, after you do your parcel analysis and all that, at what point do you do the market analysis?
Well, we don't have a market analysis in this scope because this was scoped just as a designation. You can do market analysis. It is often helpful to do a planning and market analysis exercise and effort first before you create the TIF in order to create the vision. As we understood your RFP, this was just the creation of the TIF. If you want to step back and look at the development potential, you're not sure enough of what the development potential is to craft a redevelopment plan and project, you can step back and do that first. Redevelopment plan and project, though, that is part of a TIF plan isn't very detailed. It's a constitution. It's something that you have to live with for 23 years. So often, people will create a TIF plan and do the TIF plan and the TIF designation without really having a very grounded vision of what they can do at the site, which was in fact part of the case that you're apparently engaged in, but the order of events there was they created the TIF first, then we did a redevelopment plan and strategy. In Clarendon Hills, we did it the other way. We really looked at what that site was suitable for first, and then a separate second engagement, we created the TIF. So it depends, again, on the individual circumstances that you are working with as to which order is better. There are places where you really don't want a plan before you create the TIF, because you might get speculation that is going to make land acquisition more difficult. There are some tactical issues that can be involved that you'll really have to pay attention to when you think about that staging of that kind of work. But we can do very market in-depth work to try to understand what that site's potential is at the right time, either before or after this process.
So, in a perfect world, how long would it take to get this whole TIF? The time frame? Say you got you get the job, and how long does it take for all that process to happen?
Okay. This is just the TIF creation process. Putting aside Ms. Emery's questions or issues or ideas that maybe we would do more planning and market analysis first. So why don't you, Jill?
Sure. The parcels that we approximated based on the map that was submitted with the RFP is that it's about 40 parcels within that. So no more than about 30 days to probably collect all of the eligibility. And then from that point of officially filing the redevelopment plan to village approval, we estimate usually about 120 days, so roughly 4 months or so.
Usually there ends up being something that happens along the way with the public participation needed, desired, education of decision makers and of taxing bodies, so that it often takes longer than that, but the minimum would be that 4 to 5 months.
And then after it's in place, maybe something like Clarendon Hills, it may take 4 or 5 years before something actually happens. Is that?
And there was proactive activity on the part of Clarendon Hills in order to make that happen. They were constantly trying to figure out how to get rid of the Mayflower and how to find a user to come in and help them do it. You guys know a lot about
we know about
that.
Yeah.
Were you happy to see the Mayflower go?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Especially when people used to think it was in Westmont. We'd be like, no, not Westmont, not Westmont.
The Clarendon Hills Mayflower.
Proposal is a key example of what happens when you have property owners that were not happy necessarily initially with the TIF designation and were unwilling to participate, and eventually after time became open to the prospect of, well, maybe this is good for me. And that's when suddenly everything started to roll and it opened up. And it took a number of years because at those hearings there was a number of property owners that came in and were just not happy about the designation.
Now, is that the norm, or say after the TIF is implemented, is it like usually 2 or 3 years before things start to change, or is it the norm? Like I know these economic times you can't really say because each community is different, but what would be an average?
Well, it depends, kind of where you are in the sort of planning and interest cycle. When you do something like we did the Food for Less at 69th and Ashland, we were working actually for the developer and the food store, and they had already committed themselves that they were going to do that. So that happened within a year. If you're putting the TIF in place so that you have a basis to then go out and start marketing the site, maybe doing some site acquisition, site preparation, you're going to be a couple years before you've got probably anybody on the hook. You're out there fishing or hunting, and you're going to have to hook somebody and get them interested. And then if you get the problems with the existing property owners, then you've got other problems. But so 5 years isn't unusual. Actually, when I thought about it, I thought, there's lots of people doubting along the way, but it is only 5 years. And so, it just depends. In Des Plaines, we started in 1995, not great economic times. It was, they weren't horrible. I don't know if you know Des Plaines. This was the site of the former Barrel Deck. Any of you remember that deck? It was the ugliest parking deck in the region, without question. It was 2 blocks long. It was just awful. And so divided their whole downtown. So we started out, we tore that down. The TIF was already in place. It's a downtown area TIF. But it took, and we opened the project in 2000. It took 5 years, even so, to open, to go out to the marketplace, get a developer. First attempt, they kept the developer, but the first concept didn't work out. Had to convince people to build a library as an anchor. 5 years later, we opened it. So, and that kind of gets to another timing issue somebody was hinting at or talking about, and that, you don't know, these economic cycles, real estate takes a long time. And the earlier in an economic cycle you start, the better chance you have of being done before the music stops. And you have to wait for the next cycle to start. So there's really, one thing I would say is you don't really want to break ground in the 5th or 6th year of an economic expansion. That's the most dangerous time. But you want to, at this point in the expansion, you really want to be starting a project so that either you're ready, everything is ready, and you can get it done in the middle part of the cycle, or if it drags on, you're still ready to really market yourself out and power out of the next cycle. So it's, and with the retail situation the way it is, it's going to rely on the density of population, the incomes in the area if it's retail at this site. And as the retailers come back, being ready could be a real advantage.
Well, I think the main area that we're looking at right now in the Southwest Business District, from a standpoint of opposition, I understand educating the public in that, but if you take a good look at that area, as far as residential bordering this particular area, I'm not sure you're going to get a lot of opposition from the particular residents that live down there because of the particular scenario. Now, that being said, as an overview for the entire town, what advantages does this give our taxpayers within this village? I mean, what advantages does a TIF district give them?
Okay, it gives us the ability to facilitate financially a development that would otherwise potentially not be able to occur, and shouldn't. We should only use it when the development would not otherwise be able to occur. So, let's say we have environmental cleanup. TIF funds can be used for environmental cleanup so that we have we can prepare a site to be ready to build on, ready in the market. Let's say that the site that we have is the 9.5 acres you have is due to either configuration or way it fronts on streets is not really big enough for some of the kinds of users that you ultimately want to try to attract to the site. It gives us the financial resources to work to acquire additional land to fill out that site so that the site becomes marketable. If you are attracting retail, of course, and are using this to create a retail site that you're able to compete with, then you have the advantage at the end of the day of collecting the sales tax as a municipal revenue source, and eventually all of the other property tax revenue feeds back to the overlying taxing bodies and is a benefit to them as well, and particularly with commercial development, it helps to balance your tax base so that you're not relying as heavily on the residential sector.
The other question that I would have is, in an area like this that we're talking about, we're talking about residential or retail type development and that too. My question would be, if we overlay the area with a TIF, would we be able to work into this area, say, a municipal facility as well? Could that go into that area as well as the mix of the rest of it? Or say on a portion of the area if we were to decide?
I'm going to partly let Tom answer that, but it depends on whether you want to pay for that with the TIF, which That's where the limitation would come. You own 9.5 acres. You want to use it for municipal facilities. The TIF doesn't stop you from using your land for a municipal facility, but
there are limitations in the statute on what type of municipal buildings can be constructed on the site, partly to discourage communities from basically building the new village hall within the TIF district using what was perceived as other people's tax dollars. Also, if you're going to proceed with certain types of public buildings within the TIF, you're going to want that in your redevelopment project and plan documents so that it's carrying out what you're anticipating. There are also provisions of the TIF Act that would allow you to facilitate other governmental entities, if they have any property within the TIF, in some of the capital costs associated with what they might do. The problem often, though, is that when you do a governmental building within a TIF, since you're relying upon the incremental revenue generated by the growth in the EAV, you're not going to get any growth in EAV from a site that's ultimately tax exempt. And so if you're relying upon increment to build that facility, you're going to have to find that increment somewhere else within the TIF district.
Tom, there's no quick take procedure in the TIF statute. How many projects have you seen dragged down because of the need to condemn property, or acquire property, and having, protracted legal battles?
That it happens often with condemnation. Condemnation also is a big issue with the public. In other words, I know when Clarendon Hills did their TIF district, although it wasn't in the plan, there was a general representation made by the village board that they would only proceed with negotiated deals, not forcing somebody out. But you're absolutely correct, because there is no quick take. If you are going to have to rely upon eminent domain, it can drag out a procedure for years if the person really wants to fight. Now, if all they want is more money and you're willing to throw money at them, you can resolve the eminent domain. But if they truly don't want to give up their property, they can drag it out for years. You're absolutely correct. And so I think in moving forward at TIF, if you're trying to acquire other properties, you have to do an analysis of, do we have willing owners who want to participate in the process, or are they going to throw up roadblocks?
There are some other tools. Using condemnation under TIF is more difficult under the amendments that were made after Kelo. One of the primary authors of those amendments, Steve Holler from the city of Chicago, will tell you that at the end of the day, you can still do everything that you could do before. I don't know how many other lawyers agree with him, but that's his point of view. But it's more difficult. It is generally viewed as more difficult. However, there is a provision that is often known as a friendly condemnation, where if a property owner comes to agreement to sell, and you sell under the threat of eminent domain, that they get a tax break. They get to defer their capital gains tax, and they get, I think it's now 3 years, some period of time to reinvest. It has much looser restrictions than what are called starker exchanges or like-kind exchanges. And the real benefit is that in the like-kind exchanges that people who are doing a lot of real estate might be familiar with, you can't have any boot. Any boot is taxable. Any cash that you have in your hand is taxable. In the case of a condemnation, a forced sale under a threat of eminent domain, you can refinance the new property any way you want and keep the boot. So it's a little Benny that people use to ultimately reach a negotiated settlement, but it still requires you to have in your records that threat that you were going to use eminent domain, and that can also be a political issue. And I'm not sure under the new statute whether that's any kind of legal issue.
Typically, even with the negotiated deal, you'll see the contract for the municipality to purchase have a provision that says, but for the threat of condemnation, the sale wouldn't go forward, giving them the language they need to get the extended period to reinvest the revenue.
So there are things to do to try to get a recalcitrant property owner to the table if mostly what they're interested in is money. But if they have other issues, such as the inability to relocate because of the nature of the use, it's very difficult to relocate that use, you'll have a more difficult time.
In your pricing that you gave us, did that include any market analysis work?
No, that did not include market analysis or detailed site planning or any of those kinds of things. Did not include the kind of redevelopment strategy that we did in Clarendon Hills, for example, before they decided to do a TIF. So, and this is the way we read your RFP. Obviously, if you want to approach this in a different way, we are perfectly happy to talk with you about how to revise our approach to the site, to the project, to meet your needs.
Now, we are also in the process of getting a new comprehensive plan going. Would you be able or feel comfortable starting a TIF before our new plan is done, or would you rather wait for the plan to be finished, or work kind of in hand but make sure you don't finish before the plan? Because I know the Illinois state statute says you've got to go by the comprehensive plan, and I don't know if you feel comfortable with the 98 plan.
No, I don't know. What is the timing of your comp plan? When will it be done?
Well, the RFP presentations will be next Wednesday evening.
Okay, then. Well, we can, I think ultimately the statute says that the land uses in the TIF plan need to be consistent with the comprehensive plan. There are a number of ways to do that, and some of it's a strategic and tactical kind of question. So if you think that we really want to be out there and be ready when the retail market picks back up, or the mixed-use market, and I'm picking on retail because I've been through the area and I sort of know there's the industrial there and so on, but I'm thinking the commercial uses, retail, mixed use, and other commercial uses. If we want to be ready as the market comes up, you could have the comprehensive planners focus on that area early and do, in effect, a bit of a sub-area plan, which you could adopt to then later be kept in the comprehensive plan. I think that would meet the legal test, and you would have minimal risk that your conclusion later as to the comp plan for that area would be different. And we don't have to be that specific in the. We often will have just mixed use as the land use that is in the TIF plan, because it doesn't supersede zoning. It simply controls what you can spend TIF dollars on. So there are ways to work with that so that if the issue is we want to be ready with the ability to have the financial tools, then you can work that in with the comp plan timing so that we don't have to sit and wait. Comp plans often take, even when the timeline says they're going to take a year, they often, because of the intensity of community interest and concern, they often take longer than that. So whatever the timeline says, they often take 50% or 100% longer, and it's not the fault of the people doing them. It's just that they're really being responsive to what ends up being the process you need. So if you don't want this to have to wait for 18 months to 2 years, we want to try to figure out a way to deal with this area earlier and be sure what the uses were and then move forward.
I have one more then. You talked about a Bensonville closeout of the downtown TIF. So I take it that people who, like yourself, who work on TIFs, you don't necessarily have to do the whole thing. You can be at the beginning, the middle stage, or an end stage of a TIF. People don't carry them all out for some reason?
Often they do. In Bensonville, there was a change of administration.
Oh, okay.
The mayor was voted out. The whole political tenor of Bensonville changed. Bensonville was the last holdout against the O'Hare expansion and was spending a significant amount of public dollars every year fighting the O'Hare expansion. And the electorate, as I understand the story, became tired of that, and they voted out the mayor and several members of the village board or city council, and they started down a new path. And they also in Bensenville, whereas this would be your first TIF, they had several, and they were not all performing. So this is all what was inherited by the new administration. So with the new administration, they brought in new consultants and experts to help them with their TIF issues. But often you stay with it for an ongoing basis, or there sometimes there are different people who do different things in the process.
Usually there's the TIF stays in place for 23 years, and you do have the option of retiring it early if it meets all the goals and objectives. But because of debt obligations that might be tied to the TIF that goes through the duration of the TIF's life, they usually stay in place.
Thank you.
Anything further?
We would just love to do this. We'd love to work on this, and we'd be very happy to sit down with you and look at the issues that you've brought up tonight in terms of, well, what do we really know about the potential of this site at this point? We try to respond to, when we respond to an RFP, we try to respond to the question people ask. And if in the course of the process, other questions arise, we're very willing to, with the things that are within our core expertise, with our areas of expertise, to work with you to get to work and develop the right program of professional services to solve those problems. So we hope that we've been able to show you tonight of the depth of our expertise and our ability to work with on this kind of problem, and to bring it to the point where you can really get some really good development to happen. And we would welcome the opportunity to work with you and on this exact scope, or to rescope working with you to do what you need to best achieve your goals. So we thank you for the opportunity to be with you tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time. Take a 5-minute recess.
Questions and answers and interaction with our village board. So the podium is yours.
Thank you. Well, good evening, and thank you for inviting us here tonight. We're very excited to be here, and we've are familiar with the area that we're talking about, the South Westmont Business District area. And after visiting the site and looking at it a little bit more critically than just driving past it, we do believe that this area does have a great deal of potential. I do have a presentation that we're going to share with you tonight. We distributed handouts, so if you'd like to follow along with us on that, it's the stapled package. My name is Nancy Hill, and this is my colleague, Maureen Berry. Good evening. Maureen and I are both financial advisors with Ehlers & Associates. Ehlers is a financial advisory firm, and what I'd like to do tonight is just give you a brief overview of our firm, talk a little bit about TIF and our experience with TIF, and then talk about our proposal that we forwarded to the village. So to get started, again, Ehlers is a financial advisory firm. We are independent financial advisors, and I stress that word independent because I do think it makes us stand out from some others that you may be considering for this TIF project, in that we're independent because we have no relationship with others who might attempt to influence our advice to you or attempt to influence the advice of the firm. When we're talking about TIF and economic development, what I really mean by that is that we do not work with developers. We are purely represent public sector clients. We only represent local governments just like you. We do, in some instances, work with developers in terms of maybe if there's a TIF, for example, and the developer has come forward, is interested in a project and interested in doing a TIF, then what we may do is sometimes the community wants to hire the TIF consultant, and in that instance, maybe the developer will pay us directly to work with the TIF. But even in that situation, we are representing the interests of the municipality, and we only do that when we have express permission from the village. So we are representing your interests. Again, we serve public sector clients. We have offices throughout Illinois, throughout the Midwest. Maureen and I are based out of our Illinois office, which is where this work would be done from. We also have offices in Minnesota and Wisconsin. And that's, we are able to do a lot of projects and work with a lot of communities throughout the Midwest and developers who are looking at very kind of similar projects. Maureen and I are based out of our Lisle office. That's where our Illinois office is located and where this project would be done from. We are a full-service firm in that TIF is one of our core services. TIF and economic development is two of our core services, and we also do, when I say full-service firm, what I mean by that is that we also do bonds and debt issuance finance, and that allows us to take a really big picture look at the TIF and economic development. We are looking in that regard in being able to help you in terms of not only meeting your land use planning goals, but also your financial goals. TIF is both really this kind of marriage of land use planning and physical planning as well as financial planning. And so we're going to take a big picture look at that and look at it in terms of comprehensive planning and how to meet your redevelopment goals, but also the economics of it and your financial goals as well. Ellers is an employee-owned company, and we are registered with the Municipal Securities Rulemaking Board, or MSRB. I do think this says a lot about our approach to projects and to our clients in that we do have a fiduciary responsibility to our clients. In other words, our focus is on your long-term success and not our own short-term profit. As an employee-owned company, we also have an incentive to provide you with the best possible service and build a long-term lasting relationship. We want to provide you quality work. We do provide you quality work, and we are wanting to be part of your long-term success. Also, because we are an employee-owned firm, it does encourage us to work as a team, us individually as financial advisors, to work on a team to better serve our clients. When we do that, we have the ability to serve you in a way that allows for continual service. So, for example, if for some reason one of the financial advisors is not available, you do have somebody else that is readily available and can answer your questions really within a reasonable amount of time. For this particular project, the project team would be myself, Nancy, and then Maureen Berry, also as the financial advisor, and Mindy Barrett, who is our TIF coordinator. All three of us do have a local government background. That's where we came from before we joined Ellers. I'm a former community development director and land use planner, and Maureen is also came from local government. She is was a assistant manager before she joined Ellers. Mindy Barrett is our TIF coordinator, and Mindy does a lot of the coordination with the county to gather information. There's a lot of inputs that go into a TIF report, and we're collecting information from a variety of sources. Mindy helps us collect information from DuPage County in this case and helps us coordinate with the map makers. Mindy also has a local government background in that she came from the South Suburban Mayors and Managers Association, which is the South Suburban equivalent to DuPage Mayors and Managers Conference, which I know that you're members of. I mentioned that we work as a team, and again, I'll be the lead financial advisor. What this means for you is that I'll be your main contact throughout the course of the project, but then I would also be attending all the meetings and doing a lot of the hands-on work relative to the field work and qualifying the project and preparing the necessary reports. Maureen will be assisting me with that, and she will also be greatly involved in the eligibility and the field survey work, as well as preparing the plans and quality control. So the three of us together, Mindy, Maureen, and I, really work as a team to be able to provide you this product that you'll be able to use for the long term, and we'll be able to provide you the kind of assistance and be able to answer questions that you may have during the entire process. At this point, what I'd like to do is turn it over to Maureen, and she's going to talk a little bit about our TIF experiences and provide you some examples of some projects that we've worked on.
Thank you, Nancy. Oh, sorry, I went the wrong way. Okay, I went the really wrong way this time. Okay, all right, there we go. Good evening. There are, as Nancy said, TIF is a real powerful tool, and it's a flexible tool. It's one of the core services that we provide to clients in Illinois, as well as our Wisconsin and Minnesota offices. It's a flexible tool in that you get basically a 23-year term, sometimes shorter, sometimes longer, depending on how the village sets it up and whether they apply for an extension at the end. And you get basically a defined pot of money with which you can use to help do economic development, and it really is the best source of providing a dedicated stream of revenue for your economic development needs of any tool that Illinois really offers. So one of the things that you can do with all this increment is apply it towards a wide variety of eligible costs. You can use it for streets and roadways, for sewer and water lines, for lighting, for landscaping, all of the things that can help take a problem area and basically put it on par with a green grass development. So that's really the point of TIF, is to help you try to redevelop problem areas that you probably wouldn't get a developer in to do anything with otherwise, or at least it would be difficult to do that. You can't use it for new construction, but you can use it to incent developers and to cover some of the development costs, again, like land acquisition, that you might not be able to come up with any money to take care of otherwise. And TIF can also be a catalyst for other kinds of development outside of the TIF and in your community. So hopefully once you kind of get the ball rolling with your TIF project, you'll see other development prop up. We're going to look at some examples coming up. And by the way, TIF is also a powerful tool in that it gives you more control over the development that you have in your TIF, because you are able to use this bigger carrot that you have as TIF incentives. It helps you to be able to get the kind of development and the type of development that you want, maybe a little more readily than you would be able to just by using your regular planning and zoning rules. There are some challenges that come along with TIF, though. I'm sure you're all well aware of these. The qualification and adoption process can sometimes be difficult. There can be opposition to TIFs from other taxing bodies as well as members of the public. There's a lot of misconceptions out there about what TIF is and how it's to be used. Some people think it automatically means eminent domain. It automatically means tax rates will be higher. There's a lot of misunderstanding out there about how TIF actually works. So we view our role really from the very start is to try to work with the village to overcome those obstacles from the very beginning. And one of the ways we encourage our communities that we work with to do this is really by starting to talk to the other taxing bodies immediately. If you haven't already been talking to them, you should start doing that right away in terms of letting them know where you're at with this, what you intend to do with it, how you can cooperate with the other taxing bodies to allay some of the concerns that they'll inevitably have and probably have expressed to you all already. So, but we can be your partner in that. We can help you come up with strategies. We can run numbers that will help, basically make the case for doing the TIF and help you hopefully win the other taxing bodies over. So That's really our role in this, and that's where I think a big part of the benefit that we can bring to you comes from. And I think that's, again, Nancy, and my background in local government can really, I think, come in handy in that part of the situation, because we understand what it's like to work with the other taxing bodies and members of the community who have concerns about these things. And we try to really do everything we can so that, we make your jobs a little easier with TIF. We got a couple examples here that I'd like to show you. These are some examples that we're really proud of. These are the first picture there in the top left. This is Lamont, Illinois, our little community not too far southwest of here. The top left picture obviously is the before picture, and it's not very attractive looking. And then what we have is that same parcel of property there afterwards. They were able to build some townhouses there, and they were able to use TIF funds to offset some of the extraordinary costs of developing that property. They were able to use TIF funds to help build a new parking garage, do some streetscape improvements, bury some utilities underground, and also provide a better connection with the canal that goes through their downtown, to use that as more of a water feature, an attractive feature of the community, rather than kind of just something that you use a bridge to go over. What Ellers did as part of this process was we created the documents that were used to adopt the TIF. We worked with the village during the adoption process, and there were objections from the other taxing bodies to doing this TIF. So we helped the village by providing financial feasibility studies that helped them to overcome the concerns that the taxing bodies had. And as you can see, we got a really nice result out of that project. So we're proud of that one. The next page is, these are two different places. The left picture is a picture of Rockton, Illinois, which is up near Rockford. It is similar to the Westmont site in that this was a primarily industrial and commercial avenue. The picture that you're looking at there is a picture of a new, it's called Chemtool Corporation. As soon as I said it, it sounded strange, but and that was a developer that came in and wanted to redevelop this property that was riddled with environmental problems. And so this was going to be very costly property to redevelop. We were able to put a TIF in place that helped to dedicate a stream of money that they could use to take care of those environmental issues and pay for some of the other development costs that were eligible. This was, again, a situation where they had pretty significant taxing body objections to this property. And we, again, were able to run some numbers and help them provide good information to them to help try to stem the concerns. And as a result, there's this now great company there that has provided a lot of jobs and brought a lot of property tax and other benefits to the community. So this is, I think, a real success story in Rockton. In fact, Nancy and I went up there last month, 2 months ago, and took a ride with the mayor around the community, and he was just so pleased, and the people in the community couldn't be more pleased with the result of that project. So that's one I know Nancy and I feel particularly proud of being associated with. And then the picture on the right is a picture of Tinley Park. They have a couple of TIFs we've helped them with. This is a picture of one that's in their downtown. We helped them put a TIF in place that helped them renovate some businesses that are in their downtown corridor. They were also able to use TIF funds to help improve some of the residential properties that were in the area. So it was a real win-win for not only the business community, but also for the homes in the area. We still work with Tinley Park on a very regular basis, running, financial projections for them, updating their TIF numbers from time to time, doing pro forma analyses on development proposals as they come into place. The TIF lasts over 23 years, so you may not do it all right away. It may be done in phases, and hopefully it will be. Hopefully things will continue to build on each other. So we've been a real partner, development partner with the Village of Tinley Park and our other clients to try to help continue their development there. So we try to look at ourselves, as Nancy's saying, I think from the standpoint of really being development partners with our clients, and we would certainly like to have that kind of relationship with the Village of Westmont. So I'm going to turn it back to Nancy. She's going to tell you a little bit more about the process we use to work with the village in adopting a TIF and how that works from there. So thank you.
I think Maureen brings up a good point in that all of the three examples that we used here today are really started at the same point that Westmont is at today. In the infancy of an idea, really wanting to stimulate some development in a specific corridor, and have had a really good result with that, and we're very proud to be a part of that. The proposal for services that we're presenting is in 3 phases. Phase 1 is the initial project review and preparing the eligibility report. Phase 2 is preparing the project redevelopment plan, and Phase 3 is then the adoption process. Each phase does build upon the previous phase. That's beneficial to the village because if for some reason you choose not to go forward with one of those phases, you're only then tied to wherever it is that you want to go. You'll see that there are 4 phases listed there. There's a phase 4, which is the housing impact study. At this point, I do not expect that a housing impact study would be required because the property that we're looking at is commercial and industrial in nature. We did include it in the proposal so that you were aware of it in case, for some reason, as part of our initial discussions, the boundaries do expand to, and I think in this case they'd have to significantly increase for this phase 4 to be required. But I just want to point it out because phase 4 is actually done kind of as phases, as we're in phase 1 and 2. It really runs concurrently with the other phases. This is the image of the South Westmont Business District. The area in gray is, I think, your zoning district for this particular area. We think there are some opportunities maybe to even expand the initial boundaries of the TIF, but these are the kind of discussions that we would have with you during the early stages of the process in that phase 1 in the eligibility stage. That's where we're really meeting with the village, meeting with you, talking about what your goals and objectives are, what you'd like to accomplish, where you'd like to see this corridor, this area develop someday, and how you would like to have it be in the future. In terms of, economic development tools, TIF may not be the only tool available to you, and that's the kind of discussion we would have in looking at maybe even layering different financial tools that you have available to encourage the kind of development that you'd like to see in this area. We would be conducting field studies and then establishing the TIF boundaries. We would be documenting the eligibility criteria, and then it's prepared in a report which is going to be required to move forward. The redevelopment plan, and I'm sure you've heard a little bit about this before in some of your discussions about TIF, but the redevelopment plan, really try to think of it in not necessarily the terms of a plan in terms of comprehensive planning. The redevelopment plan has a very specific goal in meeting the intentions and the requirements of the law. So a redevelopment plan does have some goals and objectives, and they have a tendency to be very broad because this is really meant for the long term of the TIF for 23 years. As part of the redevelopment plan phase, we'd also be developing some revenue estimates and a planned budget, and then preparing the necessary findings and certifications that are required by the Act. And that would be, again, prepared in the formal document. Should the village choose to move forward, then we'd go into the adoption phase, and that's where we'd be working with the village, your municipal attorney, and if you have a designated TIF attorney, to develop an adoption calendar that meets both the intent of the law as well as your needs. as much as they possibly can be met. Clearly the intention of the law is first and foremost. We're also going to be helping you coordinate there's a lot of notices and mailings that need to be done as part of the TIF process as you're going forward. We'll be at the Joint Review Board meeting, and again, we'll be able to have really good discussions with the school district, all the other taxing bodies at that Joint Review Board meeting, but hopefully a lot of discussions that those taxing bodies really know your intentions up front too, so that meeting can go as smoothly as possible. The public hearing is also another required step, and then should the village choose to move forward, with the actual adoption of the ordinances that are required for the TIF to be put into place. At this point, I'd just really like to summarize here for a few minutes. We are really excited about this project. We think it has a lot of potential. We are financial advisors. We are independent. We do not have a relationship we do not represent the interests of developers, although we do work with them. And I'd really just like to end by saying that the things that we think make us stand out from others that you may be considering are that we are client service focused. We really want to be a part of your long-term success, and we have an interest in seeing that you are successful. We do take proactive approach to projects in that we're going to be there to help calm any opposition that may arise, and hopefully, we can help you avoid that situation altogether. And we are results oriented. We want to help you make the project succeed, and we know the financial tools that are available to you, as well as the other tools that the state of Illinois gives to you, and that comes from also our local government background and having been in your shoes and being able to use those same tools. So with that wraps it up. Maureen and I are happy to answer any questions, and thank you for allowing us to be here tonight.
Did you drive around the village and see any other locations that you would suggest for a TIF area?
I've driven around Westmont quite a bit. I think there are some other potential areas, but I think it's real easy to kind of point to a downtown and say, oh, maybe that, it meets a lot of the qualifications. But I think the other thing that you need to keep in mind too, that we try to consider is if the village moves forward with maybe a TIF in a different area, how are the other overlapping taxing bodies going to react? I think there may be some areas that meet the qualifications, but is it appropriate is kind of a big question. And then is it economically appropriate? And that's a big question too. I don't know, Maureen, if you'd have anything you'd like to add to that. Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
If the village does not have a plan yet for the Southwest Mount Business District, a specific development plan, such as big box versus lifestyle center versus something completely unique, do you have planners on board? How do you help with the planning, the vision process?
Well, I'll first say that Ellers is a financial advisory firm, and we don't pretend to be a planning firm in the respect of comprehensive planning. I have a planning background. We have other staff in the firm that come from planning backgrounds, so we do have that ability to look in terms of physical planning. Would you like to add to that?
I would certainly just say, depending on your needs, we could make arrangements to work with other planning firms that we've had partnerships with in the past too, to try to meet your needs. I think we would certainly be happy to discuss that with you on an ongoing basis to see what exactly your needs were, and if we felt we weren't able to meet them adequately, we'd be happy to talk to other people and bring them on board as well.
Yeah, I want to be upfront with you too, that we are a financial advisory firm where we, believe that we can, marry this idea of TIF in terms of, of meeting both your planning goals and the financial goals as well. I mean, if you don't have if the economics don't really work, it's going to be difficult to achieve your planning goals. So I understand from talking with Fred and Shannon that you are looking for somebody to assist you with your comprehensive plan, and when we've had those instances, we do work with the staff in the planning consulting firm to make sure that that the TIF and the TIF redevelopment plan does reflect the goals and objectives of that comprehensive plan.
Well, I think what John was asking was for a particular parcel, not the comprehensive plan, but do you get involved with the market research, what's viable? And for instance, how in Rockton, who made the decision to bring in ChemCorp versus developing it for retail? How do you work with that type of decision making?
Well, I guess I would just say in the Rockton instance, I mean, this was it wouldn't have been ideal for retail use. So the parcel kind of decided on its own, I think, in that particular situation.
Well, I will say that we have done RFPs for developers. We do have that experience as well, if that's something that you're looking for. I mean, we have done, I think Tinley Park is a good example where we have worked with the municipality. They've asked us to put together RFPs and search for the developer, and then have done the developer negotiations as well, and to determine if assistance is needed, what is the appropriate level of assistance.
So do you rely on the municipality to come up with the vision for the parcel, or do you also counsel with that and say, no, you're way off base, with what you like to do, this is much more feasible?
I think, again, we do have some people on staff with planning background, and just certainly doing TIF work, I think gives you a little bit of a sense of what kinds of things work. So I think, we're certainly capable of providing that type of advice. And again, if we felt like that was going to require something that was at a more advanced kind of planning level, then we would let you know. But we'll be happy to share the pretty significant, I think, base of knowledge that we do have in terms of developing downtowns and other kinds of retail and commercial development. So.
Maureen, you mentioned something regarding the Tinley Park project of revamping residential housing. What type of residential
you could use the just single family. There were some neighborhoods, I think, that were outside of the TIF, and some single family, I think, that were used as kind of connectors from one kind of retail corridor to another. But they were able to use some of that money to help make improvements. Again, it wouldn't be to the buildings themselves, but sidewalks, streetscapes, those kind of things, public infrastructure needs that those neighborhoods had that they were able to provide with TIF funds.
If I could just add to that, I think Tinley Park is an interesting example because there's also some instances where, in that particular community, where the TIF boundaries, when they were initially discussing the TIF boundaries, the village wanted to have a very conservative approach to what the boundaries may be, because they really had some concerns about how the overlapping taxing bodies would react to that. Mm-hmm. And when it actually got to the stage of attending the Joint Review Board, in that instance, the school districts really were the ones who said, you know what, we think it should be the boundaries should be expanded, because we think that there's some opportunities for this to be really that catalyst that we were talking about for other development. And it turned out to be true. There's some residential development outside of the TIF. People saw some improvements to the commercial property that they lived close to being made, and it encouraged them to, it's kind of a little bit of keeping up with the Joneses. They felt like they could stay in the community because they saw that their community was investing in itself, and they also saw these improvements being made. So that encouraged further improvement. So again, that's what we're talking about in terms of catalyst for other development.
Right, and another a thing that particular case study I think is a good example of is using TIF to help try to make improvements to the schools that were actually within that TIF. They were able to make some improvements to the school buildings themselves with TIF funds, and those are not likely to have been improvements that the schools would have made, at least that soon, but they would have had to wait much longer and fund them with other sources of revenue. So it was a win-win, and there are ways, again, that you can try to bring the other taxing bodies on board by trying to come up with unique and creative ways so that everybody is able to really get some benefit from the TIF.
So, I need to back up here a second. You said improvements to the school. Now, was the school within inside the TIF district, or was it outside the district?
I believe it was inside the TIF in this particular instance. Now, otherwise, the law allows if there are students that are added within a TIF as a direct result of activities within the TIF, the schools are to be by law have to be reimbursed for expenses related to educating those additional students. But in this case, because there was school property within the TIF, you could use TIF money to actually make the building improvements.
Okay, so if in a given case, I'll just throw this out on the table. Let's say, for instance, if we were to consider, say, the downtown district, which is in a particular school district, so if the impact of that TIF district would increase the students that would go to the school that is outside of the TIF district, then you're saying that part of the funds from the TIF would have to go to pay the extra cost of the burden that's being put on?
I'm saying if there are additional students as a result that are created as a result of any activities within the TIF. So it would almost have to be you had townhouses or some kind of mixed-use development where you had additional housing units being added within the areas that added to the number of students that the school district had to educate. The TIF is required to provide reimbursement for the additional costs of educating those additional students.
So it would come out of the TIF.
Right.
Yeah.
Or you could make your TIF district part of that school. Zip it back there and pull that into the TIF.
Well, I was,
more flexibility.
but I was looking at it more of a. I mean, that would be one thought, but I mean, I was just trying to get a grasp on what you were saying in reference to having to reimburse the district for the input, or the actual adding to the burden.
And that's a different portion of the law in terms of actually using TIF funds to make improvements to actual school buildings. Those do have to be within the TIF in order to do that.
But the improvement has to be in terms of creating additional dwelling units which would house the students.
Right.
If there is, and we'll just clarify again, if there is a residential project, for example, that receives some TIF assistance, and then as a result has school-age children in it, that school district would have to be reimbursed. I hope that clarifies.
But if the school itself sat in the TIF district, it doesn't matter whether there's adding more kids, that school could go in to be part of the TIF?
Yes, you could use TIF funds to help.
As long as you pulled that school property into your TIF that you're working on.
Right. Now that is, I guess, more. There's more discretion on the part of the village or the city in terms of which costs or the amount of money that could be given to the schools for those kind of things. The number of students, though, that has to be determined by a formula that's based on their share of the EAV. So that's a little more hard set in stone in terms of how much funding is required to be contributed for that. I'm sorry, I don't mean to make it more confusing than it is, I know.
Now that we're working on our comprehensive, we haven't put a new plan in. Do you anticipate a problem like you would have to set back and wait for a comprehensive plan since the state statute requires that this TIF as is part of the comprehensive, or would you be able to work hand in hand with?
I think it depends on the timing. We would not have to wait for your comprehensive plan to be finished unless there is an issue with your comprehensive plan and how it addresses this area right now. If it says right now, and I apologize, I haven't looked at your comprehensive plan to see what it says about, if it says anything specifically about this area. But at this point, I don't.
Did we amend our comprehensive plan, John, when we adopted the South Westmont Business District? I believe we did.
We did it in a very general way. I know we did a market study. We may have done an amendment to that, but it would probably need to be looked at further. And we know we can amend a portion of amend it for this district, have that as an amendment to the existing 98 comprehensive plan, and then work on the rest of it.
So once we amend the 98, then we're covered under our TIF then.
My recollection was that we did amend it, and we did it in a very general way on purpose, just for this reason, to give us this kind of flexibility.
Yeah, we'd like retail business down there.
Right. And as Nancy said, the TIF redevelopment plan is very broad and is very general, and the reason, again, is because you're looking at a 23-year span of time. A lot of the TIFs that we do are generated as a result of some developer proposed project, but a good half of them are basically formed just because a village recognizes that they'd like to do something to stimulate some development. A project has not been proposed yet, but they feel that if they put a TIF in place, which many developers are looking for, that will then attract developers to come in and propose projects. It's the if you build it, they will come kind of scenario. So in that case, you want to be more general with your TIF plan. I think in any case you want to be more general with your TIF redevelopment plan because you never know what will happen in the course of 23-year period. And you may have a project that's been proposed, but you've all seen developers that have come and gone before the project gets finished. If you go into too much detail with your project cost, no, that's never happened before, I know. You go into too much detail in your TIF redevelopment plan about a specific project and what you're going to use the money for and how, the specific line items, and then that project ends up not happening, you probably need to amend your TIF plan again, in which case you need to go through the whole public adoption process all over again, the whole, paying somebody to modify the plan, having the public hearing, having the JRB, and getting the buy-in again from the taxing bodies. And depending on how painful that process may be the first time around, you might not want to go through that again if you don't have to. So those are kind of the reasons we always advocate, just try to be general. It may not, some people aren't necessarily comfortable with that, but it really is for the best in the long run. You get to be detailed when you do your redevelopment agreements with developers. That's where you get to dot the I's and cross the T's in terms of being specific about what kind of expenditures there will be, what kind of things that the village will provide TIF funding for. You need to do a pro forma analysis on all the projects for which TIF money is expected to be used, and that's where you can get real detailed.
So basically, the price you quoted is for your financial advice. We would still need to get a TIF attorney, get any developers, get any market analysis people involved that would be outside the cost of what you quoted us.
Yes. Yeah. I will say, though, you do not have to have a TIF attorney. I think as part of that initial discussions, we can talk about, the comfort level of your municipal attorney with a TIF. If there's going to be questions about eligibility, we would probably make a recommendation to maybe get a TIF attorney, or see if your municipal attorney's staff has, somebody that really specializes in that on their existing staff. But a TIF attorney is not required by state statute.
But you don't do any market analysis and any developers, those would be outside your scope, or you'd help us find them, but...
We have a network of developers that we've worked with, as Nancy has mentioned, and we would be happy to try to provide, some connections there in terms of that. But that I think kind of actively making phone calls and trying to set up appointments and actively marketing of the business is not included within our scope.
We've always been very concerned about the comfort level of our attorneys. So.
He looks very comfortable.
Yeah. Happy. Nobody's happy.
Well, thank you, Nancy.
I guess just to add on that point a little bit, as with any type of law, a TIF attorney is not needed until they're needed. If you run into a situation where you have objections from the taxing bodies, the only way in which they can legally object to a TIF at the JRB level is by basing it on eligibility criteria. And so I guess it's just really important that you as a village are very comfortable with the eligibility criteria in our report, and having that extra set of eyes, an independent set of eyes with that kind of TIF legal experience, I think is a very valuable step in the process. It's not used every time, as Nancy said, but a lot of times it can really be well worth it.
Well, that came out of you because you said works with our designated TIF attorney, and that's why I'm like, we got to get a TIF attorney. I was thinking John would be able to handle it, but I don't know.
And your municipal attorney may be your designated TIF attorney.
Okay, gotcha. Want to make sure on that.
Put you on the spot.
Yes, sir.
Could I ask one question?
Yes, please step up, Justin.
My name is Justin Scheid. I'm a citizen of Westmont. You spoke briefly about the positive benefits of a TIF to properties immediately adjacent to the TIF and the improvements, sort of the keeping up with the Joneses concept. Westmont has primarily three distinct retail corridors. We have the Ogden to the north, we have the downtown, and then we have the 63rd Street. What I'm wondering is, in the firms or in your experience doing retail TIFs, do you see any benefit or a disadvantage to the other retail corridors in a particular village? So in other words, by doing the 63rd Street TIF, is there going to be any benefit in your experience to something in the downtown or something on the Ogden Avenue retail area, or are those really just sort of mutually exclusive?
I think to the extent at any time you have development of a certain part of the community, it benefits the entire community, and it certainly, I think, will kind of spur competition in terms of, now this other retail sector has to work a little harder to attract, folks coming their way maybe than it did before. So they put a little more money into their facades and improve their property values in a way to try to keep up. So there does tend to kind of be a interconnectedness in terms of the development.
Now, do you see that in those communities that maybe in the downtown now, the downtown people that have property there, they want a TIF, or retailers coming in are going to say, well, I'm not going to go to the downtown because you got money on the 63rd Street area or on Ogden Avenue. Do you see that where there's a progression of TIFs almost to keep up in the area, to keep the retail?
I was going to, absolutely. We do see that. And we have had examples of where there has been a TIF created in one area, and then other segments of the community, maybe the downtown, then say, hey, you know what, we see activity happening here. We want to be a part of that too. How can we get that to occur? Going back to one of just the very basic reasons for a TIF, it is to jumpstart an area that is more economically sluggish, that maybe has not had activity in it. And so the TIF is really to help stimulate some of that. Really, In a lot of ways, the Ogden Avenue corridor has clearly been more successful than the South Westmont Business District area. They're two different areas. I'm not saying that maybe there aren't some opportunities on Ogden Avenue, but having been familiar with Westmont, I can see that the South Westmont Business District area has some opportunities there that may take some precedence for right now anyway.
Any final questions? I want to thank both of you, Nancy and Maureen, for coming in this evening.
Thank you.
And giving us your presentation. Appreciate that.
We wish you the best with your redevelopment initiatives, whatever you choose to do. So, good luck.
Thank you.
And feel free to, our contact information is there. Feel free to contact us if you have further questions. We'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in.